Lori took the baby for a walk in the gardens. It was quite a sunny day, but it also wasn't too hot. She thought it would be good for her and the baby to get some well-deserved fresh air. Her day had been pretty much mundane. She had been occupied with Amelia all day. She wasn't complaining, though. She loved her job. It was very rewarding, and it kept all the bad thoughts away. After what had happened the night before, Lori was determined to get it over with and not think about it again. She knew she would inevitably have to talk about it, but she didn't think she was quite ready yet. Occupying herself with Amelia kept her busy. It kept all those thoughts away. She also really loved spending time with Amelia, too. It made her very happy and at peace with herself. She wandered towards the pool area and was surprised to see someone was inside the pool. As far as she knew, the staff didn't swim in the pool. She didn't know if it was because they weren't allowed to, but they certainly didn't. It must be someone else then. Elliot? She didn't realize Elliot was back in the house. He popped his head out of the water and smiled at her like they were old friends. His wet, dark hair plastered all over his forehead. Lori shifted uncomfortably in the flip-flops she was wearing. She was wearing flip-flops and shorts. She looked about as ordinary as she could ever look. "Hello?" she said shyly as she waved at him. "Hi," he answered as he swam towards her. Lori took several steps back with the stroller as he got out of the pool, dripping wet and half-naked, except for the beach shorts he was wearing that was clinging to him like a second skin. She glanced at him and reminded how ripped he was. She also reminded that she had seen him 3 times without him having a shirt on. He wiped the excess water from his face and looked into the stroller and waved at Amelia. "She looks good," he commented as he looked up to Lori. "Thanks," Lori answered, and he nodded. "So how have you been?" "Fine. I should go," she added as he took a towel and started drying off. She gently turned the stroller around and went back into the house. She had things to do in the house anyways. She was barely in the house for a few minutes when Elliot walked in, wearing dry clothes, another beach shorts and a large yellow t-shirt with a band on it. His hair was still dripping wet. "I figured you might have been uncomfortable since I just came out of the pool." "I have that effect on women," he asked as he winked, and Lori's eyes widened. Was he? Was he trying to flirt with her? "Oh, really?" She scoffed, and he nodded. "It's true. You don't have to explain yourself, though. Happens to the best of us." Lori rolled her eyes. He was a smooth talker, quite charming looking, too. "Okay," she answered and went back to folding the basket of Amelia's clothes and blankets that had recently been washed. She had volunteered to help with putting them away. "So tell me about you, Lori. I'm curious." Lori shrugged. "To be honest, there's not much to know," she confessed, and Elliot shrugged. "I find that hard to believe." "Well, it's the truth. What did you do before you became a nanny?" Lori shrugged. "I was a waitress." "Whoa, really? What restaurant?" "At a diner." "Well, you're lucky I didn't see you then, because I would have definitely hit on you." Lori's cheek blushed red as she turned to Elliot with wide eyes. "I think I'm older than you," she said, and he raised his eyebrows. It was true, Elliot did look young. She didn't think much about it when they first met, but the second time they met, he definitely looked and sounded young. "How old?" "Well, I'm 22, Lori said, and Elliot shrugged. "Big deal. We're almost the same age." "Well, how old are you?" she asked, and Elliot shrugged. 21. But in 8 months I'll be 22. "But I'm older than you." Lori deadpanned, and Elliot shrugged. "Only with a year." Lori stood up from the couch. She was done with the clothes and wanted to take them upstairs. Elliot rushed towards her and took the basket from her. "Let me help with that," he said, and Lori let him, only because he was getting way too close for her liking. "Where do you want me to put it?" "The nursery." "Do you know where that is?" she asked, and he nodded. "Of course. I've been there like twice," he said as he rolled his eyes and strutted out of the room. Lori picked up Amelia from her bassinet. It was time for her bottle. She just had to heat it up. She thought as she went to the kitchen. She picked up a bowl from one of the shelves and left it under the sink, then filled it with water. "What are you doing?" Elliot said as he walked in, and Lori shrugged, heating up the baby's bottle. "Let me hold her for you," he offered, and Lori shrugged. She was fine. She had done it 1,000 times while holding the baby. She really didn't need any help. No, it's fine, she said, but he persisted. When she refused again, he walked up to her and simply grabbed the baby from her. I said no twice. She said, and Elliot shrugged. You didn't have to. Besides, I haven't held her in so long. You were hogging her. Her jaw dropped. She turned back to him sharply. I was not. Oh, you definitely were. Lori? Gabriel said the minute he walked in. Lori was startled. She didn't hear him come in. He had also come home early, which was quite unusual, seeing as he always came home at least 3 hours later. She had not seen him leave for work, but he looked quite tired. She hoped she didn't keep him up at night with the whole nightmare saga. He glanced at Elliot and narrowed his eyes at him, swiftly walking towards him and taking the baby from his arms. What are you doing here? Elliot laughed nervously. I actually came to see you. I find that very hard to believe. Gabriel mused as he turned to Lori. There was seriousness in his eyes, and the way he was staring at her intensely made Lori self-conscious. We need to talk, Lori. Lori followed Gabriel to the nursery where they would talk. They ran into Grace on the way. You're back? Early too? She said in a surprised tone, and he shrugged. I actually needed the rest. Decided to close early. Grace nodded, her face beaming. She patted Gabriel on the back. That's great. That's very good. I'll get dinner started, she said as she walked past them in excitement. Gabriel made sure he sent Elliot out of the house before they both left, though. He specifically told him to go and wait for him in the pool house. Lori didn't know why he did, but she didn't think Gabriel liked his cousin very much. It was visible in how little they interacted. Especially with the way he treated him, she didn't know if there was a specific reason he didn't. But he just seemed not to. They walked into the nursery. Gabriel had taken Emilia from Elliot before he went up the stairs with Lori. He had kissed her cheek and rubbed her head. He must have missed her, and she must have missed him too, because she started smiling at him, giving him a huge toothless grin. How are you doing? He asked as they walked into the nursery, and Lori shrugged. She pretty much felt fine since she had not allowed herself to think about what happened. Good. Thank you for everything, Elle. You don't need to thank me, Lori. I only did what was necessary. Gabriel said with his back turned to her as he patted the baby in his arms. Lori nodded, standing awkwardly by the door frame and watching Gabriel. Gabriel turned to the baby and set her in her crib. Then slowly, he took off his jacket, dropping them on the rocking chair, and rolled the sleeves of his shirt. Then he turned to Lori and glanced at the couch in front of them. Lori went first, sitting herself at the edge of the couch unconsciously. Gabriel noticed this and sat at the other end. About what happened? He raised his hands, stopping her. I'm not asking for another apology, Lori. I am not. I'm just worried about you. That's all. His voice was softer now, much more gentle. He genuinely looked concerned for her. She could see the worry etched in his features. Lori felt safe with him somehow, in a way she had never felt safe with anybody else. His presence was weirdly comforting. I know. Grace and I talked about getting you professional help. Do you think you'd be willing to speak to a therapist? He gently asked, and Lori shook her head. A therapist? No. That was too much, besides she didn't want to impose. I don't think I need to speak to one. I'm fine. Are you? Lori shrugged. I'm used to the nightmares. They actually stopped when I came here, and they haven't been this scary in a while. They came back because of him, right? That man we met? He asked, and she nodded in reply. Lori could see Gabriel's fists hardening as he looked away. She wiped her sweaty palms on her shirt. She was nervous, but perhaps it was time. Finally time to tell him everything about her. The whole truth. At least the one he deserved to know. I had a difficult life. I was on the run, away from my adopted family and violent brother when I met Asher. He took a liking to me. That's where it all began. Lori raised her head to look at Gabriel. He was staring at her intently, focusing on her every word, and her cheeks were getting red from shame. She had never really admitted to being raped to anybody, not even a medical personnel. She didn't even know why she felt like she could tell Gabriel, but she just knew that she wanted to tell him. Besides, after everything he had done for her and how he had been so caring and supportive to her, he deserved to know. He and my brother. Adopted brother, she clarified. They kidnapped me. I was locked up and under heavy surveillance from Asher's men for 4 months. In those 4 months, her voice started breaking. Lori, you don't have to give me the details. Gabriel started, but Lori shook her head. I don't, but I want you to know what that bastard did to me. While I was captive, he would beat me, make me cook and clean for his men, and then at night, he would rape me. When I finally escaped, I found out I was pregnant. I had no choice but to give the baby away. Lori sighed. He knew you were pregnant? He did. He saw me once. He had been planning to kidnap me back then, but I guess he got confused when he met me with a bulging belly. My brother, however, wasn't so confused. We got into a bad argument. He pushed me down the stairs and I went into premature labor. He is the reason you lost your baby. Lori, why didn't you tell someone? Why didn't you report them? Lori scoffed. Report them? I was a poor, broke waitress working in some dirty diner and they were in a gang. It wouldn't take much for them to put a bullet through my head. I had nobody to trust, nobody to talk to about it, so I just forgot about all of it and moved on. It was the best thing to do. Well, it's not. At least not anymore. The way he talked to you, he seemed to still think that he had a hold on you. We need to deal with that, Lori. Lori shook her head. Oh no, she didn't want to involve Gabriel. He had already done a lot for her. A whole lot. She didn't have to involve him in her own drama. No, please just let it go. I don't want you involved or dealing with that kind of crowd, she pleaded. Lori, I'm serious, Gabriel. I just really want that phase of my life to be over. I don't even want to think about it. Gabriel was still not convinced. He sighed as he rolled his eyes. I'll let it go, for now. But the moment I see him around you, I don't care what you say, Lori. I promise you I won't spare him. Gabriel's voice was deep, husky, and a little bit scary. Lori gulped as she nodded. Yes, she said. Gabriel stood up and left the nursery quietly, leaving Lori with Amelia. The night went by in a blue. Lori watched the sun set with Amelia in her arms. Gabriel visited Elliot in his pool house. Whatever conversation they had was short and brief, because Gabriel came back out barely 3 minutes later. Gabriel ate dinner early, then retreated to Gus' study for the night while Lori ate dinner with Grace. Shortly after Grace left, leaving only Lori and the servants who had retired for bed, she stayed in the nursery and gave Amelia a bath, then rocked her for a long time before she finally went to bed. After putting the baby to sleep, she retreated to her own bedroom. The lack of a door slightly bothered her, but Mr. Gregory had told her it would be fixed the next day, and she could stay in the guest room downstairs until it was fixed. But she didn't like the room downstairs. It looked too dark, too different. She would manage her own bedroom, she told herself, despite the chilling cold that was coming inside her room. She took a quick night shower and changed into a small tank top and shorts. She was fluffing her pillows when she heard the sound of a door open down the hall. She ignored it. It was probably Gabriel going to bed, she thought as she went back to fluffing her own pillows. Barely a minute later, Gabriel appeared in front of her door. "What are you doing?" he asked, and she turned. Lori's jaw dropped. Her eyes fixated on him. She had never seen Gabriel without a shirt before, and now she knew why. He was perfect. He was physically fit, in the attractive kind of way that could make women swoon, but not enough to make him look too muscular. The way he rested on the wall and folded his arms made his muscles even more visible. Lori wished she didn't gawk and stare at him for so long, but she found it practically impossible to tear her eyes away from him. She gulped and cleared her throat. He had caught her staring. "I'm getting ready to go to bed." He nodded. "Okay, but you're not sleeping here, though. Come with me," he said, and Lori hesitated. She didn't want to sleep in his room, but he seemed inclined to monitor her, and she really wasn't complaining. She has restful night when she slept in the room. "I don't want to impose," she started as she rushed towards him, getting a good view of his powerful back. "You're not. It's just until your nightmares get better," he said as he opened the door of his room. Lori stood in front of him and glanced into the dark room. Oh, the things her mind could imagine happening in this dark room. "You can say no if you want. I'll let you sleep in the guest room if you don't want to sleep here. You're allowed to choose," he said. His eyes said something different, though. They didn't seem to convey the same words he was saying. There was a different story to them. Lori shook her head. "I'll rather sleep here," she said as she walked into the room. They had a slow day. Actually, it had been a slow couple of days. Days like that were popular at the diner. They were in a shitty neighborhood with about 70% old people and a retirement home nearby. It was a wonder they got any customers at all. Finding help had also been very hard. The teenagers didn't like to stay too long. They found the job boring, plus the pay wasn't even that good. Ever since Lori left, Bertie was having a hard time dealing with the new hire Yvette. The girl was 19, and she had a really loud mouth. She questioned everything Bertie or asked her to do, and she always came to work late. Bertie was sick of her. She honestly missed Lori and even felt bad for the way she had treated her. Maybe if she had treated her better, she wouldn't have left work. Well, who was she kidding? Lori wasn't really going to work at the diner for years like her. She didn't look like she was that kind of person. But the way she had left truly baffled her sometimes. She left a day after that strange, tall, and handsome stranger had come to see her in a fancy car. She wondered if the man asked Lori to be his escort or something, because she couldn't imagine what such a rich and powerful man would be doing with Lori. Someone stepped into the diner, their 5th customer for that day and probably the last one they would have before sunset. The man looked vaguely familiar. He was short, spiky, dyed blonde hair with black roots. He was dressed casual enough, but something about him looked sinister and creepy. Bertie had a weird feeling that she had seen him before. He walked up to the counter with a frown on his face. He had dark, broody eyes, the kind that looked unsettling, a sharp jaw and thin, busted lips. He looked like he had just gotten out a fight, Bertie noted, with the purple bruise forming alongside his temple. "Welcome to Jay's. What can I get you?" she said as she fished out her notepad from her breast pocket, and the man shook his head. "Nothing. I'm looking for someone who works here." "Loretta Wyatt," he answered, and Bertie's ears perked up. Of course, that's why he was familiar. She had seen him with Lori before. "She doesn't work here anymore," she answered, and the man's frown deepened. "Since when?" Bertie shrugged. "A few weeks ago." "Know why she left?" he asked, and Bertie shrugged. "I don't know." The man sighed. He muttered some curse words and paused for a while before turning to Bertie again. Then he dipped his hand in his pocket and brought out a $100 bill. "I'll add 100 more if you can tell me anything you know about her." Bertie raised her eyebrows. Okay, now she was interested. What could he possibly want from Lori? She glanced around the diner, but no one else was with them except for Mr. Foe, who was already dozing off in his seat. "Make it 300 and I'll even give you her address." The man didn't look impressed, but he smiled slyly. 300 and you give me her contact, any information you have on her and who you think she might be hanging out around with. "I don't need her address," he added, and Bertie shrugged. "Deal. Money first," she quickly added, and the man scoffed as he dropped the money on the table. $300 just to find out about Lori. Whoa! She would sing like a canary, she thought as she shook her head slightly. Lori was pregnant, yay? What happened to the baby? The baby died. Premature labor or something. Bertie said as she shrugged. She never really cared about that anyways. Lori was stupid enough to get pregnant, and besides she was planning to give the baby away anyway, so she must be ecstatic that the baby died. The man seemed quiet for a while, and Bertie's eyes widened. "Wait, are you the father?" "No, are you fucking crazy? I'm her brother," the man answered defensively. "Oh, Lori never mentioned family," the man shrugged. "Yeah, she's weird like that. My name's Jared Wyatt." Bertie nodded. He could be lying for all she knew, but she didn't really care. "Did you notice anything unusual before she left work?" "Anyone come to see her or something?" he asked nervously, and Bertie nodded. "Yes, there was this man. He came to see her before the end of her shift." "Really? Describe him. How did he look like?" he persisted. "He was tall, very handsome to be quite honest. He was wearing a suit, and he had a really nice ride." Jared's face morphed into confusion. "A suit? Are you completely sure?" "I am." He looked sophisticated and very rich. You don't forget that kind of person. Jared was now very confused. He thought it was Asher. He thought Asher was the one who had come to see her, because that seemed to be the only logical explanation. Even though he and Asher had fallen out, he still talked with Asher's men and they had told him Asher was trying to reach out to Lori since she was pregnant. When he had visited Lori's apartment and heard from her neighbor that she had not been home in weeks, he thought it was because of Asher. He thought Asher had taken her back with him, but now he didn't even know what to think because he was more confused than he had ever been. Did Lori have another man in her life, and who was he? "Give me her number," he said, and Bertie nodded. "Give me a second," she said as she walked into the inner room. She came back out a few minutes later with a piece of paper with a number written on it. "That's the contact number she put down in her application." Jared nodded. He left the diner. "It's funny you picked this place for our meeting. It was a sushi restaurant. It was light and airy, with soft leather couches and plush cushions. He had been there once." Sabine said as she laughed. Draco had managed to close down the entire restaurant for them. They had met on neutral ground, far away from their territories. To be honest, Gabriel was surprised by how fast she had responded to his message. It was almost as if she had been eager to meet him and help. It was also very suspicious, given how angry she had been by the council's decision after they found her guilty of misconduct. Gabriel looked around. Of course he remembered the restaurant. They once had a date in it, their first date. He cringed inwardly as he remembered that he had once gone out with Sabine. Gabriel shrugged. Mere coincidence. It was not. He had picked it exactly for the sentimental value that Sabine might attach to it. It was merely a ploy to tug at her heartstrings, nothing more. "I assume this is about Susie?" she asked, and Gabriel nodded. Vara stood at the opposite end of the room, sharpening her claws with a knife. He found it distasteful that she would leave them out like that, but for some reason she seemed to think they looked intimidating, as if the scar on her face wasn't intimidating enough. "You guessed right. You mentioned you knew about her family. Well, I'd like to know what you know. Susie never shared anything about her family with me." Sabine nodded, a smile playing on her red lips. "And why the sudden interest? You certainly didn't care to find out about them when she died." Ouch! That was true, he previously didn't care. In fact, he had done very little to find out her family, he just assumed they didn't exist. "It's very important I do. I want my daughter to be close to them." Sabine scoffed. "They're not the kind of crowd to get close to." "Why?" he asked, and she shrugged as she settled back in her seat, adjusting the front of her blouse in a way that allowed more of her cleavage to show. Gabriel resisted the urge to roll his eyes. "What's in it for me?" "I mean, up until a few days ago you wanted to throttle me," she added, and he ignored her question. "What do you want in return? Money? Land?" he asked, and she glanced at Vara, who was smirking at him. "You're really that desperate?" she asked, and Gabriel sighed. "Will you help me or not?" "Fine, I'll help. That I only ask for one thing in return." "What is it?" Sabine leaned towards him, her hands on the table in between them, her eyes staring at him slyly. "Give me your word." "My word?" Gabriel asked as he turned to Draco, who quickly shook his head. "My word that what?" he asked, and she shrugged. "Just give me your word. A time will come when I ask a favor from you. I need to be sure that you'll do it, no matter what it is. Stop playing games, Sabine." He warned, and Sabine shrugged. "I'm not. But that's all I want in return, and if you cannot give me your word, then I have nothing else to do here," she said as she stood up, picking her purse from the table, and she started walking away, her steps slow, calculated. Gabriel groaned as he massaged his temple, examining his choices. Making a deal with Sabine was stupid, very stupid, especially since she could demand for anything in return. But his daughter needed the help, and there was no other way, at least no other way that he could see. If he refused her offer and Amelia fell sick again, he wouldn't be able to forgive himself. "Wait," he called out, and he could hear Draco hesitating behind him. "Alphas?" Gabriel silenced him with a look. Sabine stopped, then slowly turned and walked back to her seat. "Deal?" she asked, and he nodded. "Deal." She practically beamed, excitement showing in her features. "Now say it. Give me your word." Words were bonds. A spoken agreement in their culture was as strong as a written one or a legal one. It held weight. Whatever Sabine's favor was, he would have no choice but oblige to give in to her wishes or go to war with her pack. I give you my word. Dinner was salmon with buttery garlic green beans and a kale salad. Lori was ravenous. She had taken Amelia for another checkup. Her doctor had been monitoring her temperature and giving her medication. Her fever had come back early that morning, after a few days of them being absent. Lori also noticed Amelia was getting bigger. She used to be able to carry her with one arm before, but now it seemed like she had grown a lot more faster. She knew it was typical for babies to grow. Of course, Amelia was slowly leaving the newborn stage, but it didn't make it any less weird that she was getting bigger and longer. Her hair had also started to grow out. She had been bald for months, with not a hair in sight, but Lori was excited to spot a few blonde strands of hair on her head. She didn't know what Susie looked like, but with the little she could see, Amelia would be blonde, like her mother probably. If her mother was blonde, or maybe her hair would grow darker and she grew, it was still too early to tell. They were doing a lot of tummy time now. Amelia loved tummy time. Lori was impressed. The food smells amazing, she said as she sat down. Amelia was in her hands, tugging at her shirt with her small fingers in gorilla grip. She no longer hid the fact that she breastfed the baby. Nobody else in the house seemed to have a problem with it. Grace had walked in on her doing it and she had not said a word. She didn't even mention it right after. Ever since that day, Lori had been more comfortable to breastfeed in front of the staff. Grace nodded. "Too bad I won't be staying for dinner," she said, and Lori shook her head. "You are. Why aren't you staying for dinner?" she asked. Grace was setting a plate for her while Lori raised up her shirt to breastfeed Amelia. "I have to go. My sister is spending a few days with me. I have to go pick her up at the airport. Mr. Gabriel already gave me a few days off." "Whoa, really?" Grace nodded. She was beaming. "Yes, he won't be around either. I think he's going on a trip." "Really?" Lori asked with worry lacing her voice. Gabriel was going on a trip, meaning he would be gone for a few days, and Grace too. Ugh, the house would be so boring. She liked talking to Jenny and Mr. Gregory sometimes, but they could be so boring. "Yes, he'll tell you all about it when he gets back. In the meantime, I have to go, Lori," she said as she waved at Lori and blew a kiss to Amelia, who was sucking ravenously. Lori waved back, watching her leave. Then she was left all alone in the dining room. They only used it for dinners, and it was big and lonely, and now Lori was considering moving to the kitchen to finish her dinner. She stayed anyway, forking large pieces of salmon and green beans in her mouth. Oh, she loved the salmon. She just loved the texture, the way it tasted, and practically melted in her mouth. Growing up, she never really ate salmon, at least not as much as she would have liked to. Mrs. Wyatt wasn't really a fish lover, but boy did she like chicken. Roast chicken, fried chicken, chicken pot pie, and chicken casserole. She ate chicken every day, all day. The woman was a handful. "Hello, Lori," Gabriel's voice said, startling her, and Lori quickly pulled down the front of her shirt. Her cheeks went red. It was probably too late. He had seen them. Although when she looked at him, his gaze was averted. She subconsciously tried to smooth her hair, knowing she probably looked like a mess. "Welcome. I didn't know you'd be back so early," she said as she adjusted herself in her seat, pulling the baby closer to her chest. Gabriel practically worked throughout the week, even on weekends. He was always out on Saturdays too, dressed in casual work affair. Sundays too, he was mostly out, but only for about 3 hours, then he was back home. He worked very hard, too hard in her opinion. He was CEO. Shouldn't he delegate? She thought being in charge of a company would ensure that he at the very least had his own free time to do whatever he wanted. "Well, me either, but I finished early." "Quick question, do you have a passport?" he asked, and Lori nodded. "Yeah, why?" Gabriel settled in the seat across from her. "Because we're going to Canada," in fact, he said with a small smile on his face. "Canada?" Lori repeated, and he nodded. "Amelia's doctor is worried about her. She wants me to find out if her mother's family has any history of genetic diseases." Lori's eyes widened. "You said she was fine." Gabriel nodded. "And she is. It's just a precaution. I promise you she's fine." He reassured her, and Lori nodded. "Okay, have you contacted her family?" Gabriel shrugged. "I have some addresses. We would visit them and check them out." I originally didn't want to bring the two of you along, but I think it'll be a good thing for Amelia to meet her grandmother. Lori nodded. Okay. When do we leave? She asked, and Gabriel shrugged. Soon. I'll make all the arrangements. We should leave tomorrow, he answered. Amelia was already full and looking away from her breast, more focused on her dad who was across from her. Lori quietly lifted her up and placed her on her shoulder to burp her. Let me take her, Gabriel said as he walked over to her side of the table with his arms outstretched. He looked excited to see her, and she smiled when she saw him too. Lori quickly adjusted her shirt when he came over to her seat. She handed him the baby, and he left the dining room with her, murmuring something about her enjoying dinner in peace. Alone in the dining room, she finished her dinner quickly and cleared the plates. She washed them and cleared the kitchen, putting some bottles out for Amelia's night feeding. It was bath night, so she would be giving the baby a bath before she went to bed. Her new bed being Gabriel's bed, the place she had slept in consistently now for the last 3 days. She had gotten past the awkwardness a night ago. She found her nights more peaceful anyways. The bed was large enough that they wouldn't touch, and when she woke up, Gabriel already left. Upstairs, Gabriel was changing Amelia's diaper while still in his work clothes. Let me help with that, Lori murmured, and he shook his head. No need, just pass me a wet wipe, he said as he furrowed his eyebrows. He was very focused, even though all he was doing was changing a diaper. Lori found it funny. Here. She handed him one and he murmured a thanks. I'm going to run a bath for her now. Okay, I'll bring her to you. She walked to the bathroom after turning on the water heater, setting the temperature on the taps for a perfect warm bath. She placed the supplies she would need nearby and a blanket over her shoulder. Gabriel brings her a naked, squirming Amelia a few moments later, and she gently set the baby inside her baby bathtub. You should go change and have dinner. I'll take it from here. She finally told Gabriel, who was towering over her and watching her intensely. Gabriel sighed. Okay, I will see you later. It took over half an hour to finally get Amelia to sleep after her bath. She was exhausted after that and decided to go downstairs to drop some laundry. She heard someone humming and found Gabriel in the kitchen, fresh out of a shower with wet hair, blue shorts, and a tight muscle shirt. He turned and smiled at her. Don't mind me. Just warming up dinner. Lori nodded. No problem. I'm just dropping off the laundry. Gabriel nodded. Headed to bed after? Not yet. Care to sit with me while I eat my dinner? He asked, and Lori nodded. Sure. At the table, Gabriel brought out a bottle of Pinot Noir. He didn't offer Lori one, knowing her answer might be no, since she was breastfeeding, but he saw that she was staring at the bottle as he poured some into a wine glass for himself. Do you want some? I'm sure a little won't hurt, he said, and she finally caved. Okay, just a little. Gabriel brought out another glass, pouring only a little of the wine for her. Is this okay? He asked softly, and she nodded. Yes, thank you. They sat in silence for a while with nothing but the sound of Gabriel's cutlery on the plate and Lori setting her glass of wine on the table after drinking it all. Suddenly a thought crossed her head, and she turned sharply towards Gabriel. After he talked to Elliot, she had not seen him. She didn't even know if he was still in the pool house, but she didn't see any signs that indicated that he was. She wondered what Gabriel could have told him. Do you not like Elliot? I've noticed your conversations are always strained, she asked, and Gabriel smiled. Was it so obvious? It definitely was. She could feel the tension in their glares the other day. Yes. Well, I like Elliot. He's my cousin, but he can be extremely annoying and out of line. He doesn't like to follow orders, pretty much does whatever he wants and thinks he can get away with it because we're family. I didn't know he was like that. Gabriel nodded. Yes. He's also pretty charming, so when I complain about him, it seems like I'm making a big deal out of nothing. You should be careful around him, though. I think he likes you. Lori's eyes widened. Likes me? Yes, I can see it, Lori chuckled. That's not possible. We've only met like 3 times, and I doubt we had much of a conversation. Gabriel shrugged. I think that's enough time for him to be attracted to you. Lori raised an eyebrow. Do you develop attractions that fast? She asked, and he looked a bit surprised by her question, but smiled anyways. I don't think so. although it didn't used to be the case. What changed? Lori asked as she leaned forward and poured herself more wine. Gabriel eyed her, but he said nothing. You grow older, and you find out that there's more to the surface. Well, that sounds profound. It isn't really. What about you, Lori? He asked her, and she pointed to herself. Me? She asked, and Gabriel nodded. Yes. Lori shrugged. She had never had a real relationship, never been in one. Sure, it sounded very unbelievable, but it was the truth. I never had a real relationship. Gabriel raised his hand, cutting her off. You've never found yourself attracted to anyone? He asked, and Lori looked away. The question was a setup, because she knew the answer. Of course she had found herself attracted to someone before. The only problem was that he was sitting in front of her. I think everyone has. I mean, it's normal, she stated lightly. Yes, it is normal, Gabriel said, as he dropped his fork and leaned towards her, his piercing blue eyes staring at her intensely. His voice was low, husky, and the room was heavy with tension as he said, I have to confess, I've been attracted to you since I laid my eyes on you. Lori gasped a bit. Gabriel, he shook his head. You don't have to say anything. You don't even have to act on it. I just wanted to let you know that. Dinner ended rather awkwardly. Even though she knew she should stop, she still poured herself another glass of wine. Gabriel eyed her glass. Are you sure you want any more of that? Lori shrugged. It tastes okay. Yes, it does. But you don't seem like someone who drinks. I don't. I actually think I'm a lightweight, she said, and Gabriel nodded. Have you ever been drunk before? He asked, and she nodded. Once. At prom. Some of my classmates snuck in bottles of beer and poured alcohol into the fruit punch. I think we all got drunk from it. He chuckled. How did it feel? Oh, she could remember the moment as clear as day, and it felt horrible when she thought about it. Really horrible. Everyone was either drunk or slightly tipsy, and the school had sent them all home early. It felt weird. Really, I wasn't that drunk, but I kept tripping, even though I wore a short dress and my heels were low. Gabriel chuckled. But you had fun, right? She nodded. Yes, it was fun. Lori finished the rest of her wine. She wanted to go to bed, but she also wanted to sit and talk with Gabriel for hours. She felt like she didn't know much about him. I feel like I don't know anything about you, she mused, and Gabriel raised his eyebrow. Really? She nodded. Yeah. I feel like I know you, but then I don't know a lot of things about you. True, Gabriel confirmed. There's not much to know, to be honest. Before Amelia came into my life, all I did was work. It was my whole life. Oh, was that disappointing? Gabriel asked, and Lori nodded. You're a young rich man. I actually expected more, she confessed, and Gabriel nodded. There was only little he could tell her, at least without having to go into details about him being a werewolf or an alpha. Much of his life revolved around being an alpha. There was a lot he wanted to tell her but couldn't. There was no way he could tell her about him being a werewolf, at least not presently. I inherited most of what I have from my parents. My parents inherited what they had from my grandfather, and all my life I've been taught how to manage what was given to me, how it came with great responsibility. There was to be no room for failure or error, and somehow along the line I lost myself in all that. Oh. My parents died years ago. I'm their only child, and being an only child was hard because they had all these expectations from me. I know they meant well, but sometimes I wish they let me live my life how I wanted to. Lori reached out and touched his hand. He flinched a little, her fingers cold to the touch. I'm sorry. I can't seem to stay warm. She apologized. It was true. He had noticed it a while ago. She was always cold. Gabriel was a warm-blooded creature. Being a werewolf meant his temperature was always regulated. Always warm, even during the winter. Lori was the opposite. He wondered if it was her nature. That's okay. I have enough heat for both of us, he said as he took her hand in his and enclosed them in his. His arms were deliciously warm, slightly toasty. Lori sighed in pleasure. I think you still have the time to live your life the way you want. Have fun and all, she said, and Gabriel shook his head. When he was younger, he used to crave that lifestyle. The late nights at the club, the constant partying and the traveling around the world that most of his acquaintances and age mates had. But now that he was older, he was actually more content with what he had. He missed the fact that he didn't get to experience that sort of lifestyle, but he didn't crave for it as much as he did. I don't crave for it like I used to, but I would like to experience it. But I'm a father now. I doubt I have time for late-night parties when I have a baby. He added, and Lori shrugged. I think you definitely do. Besides, being a parent doesn't mean you shouldn't have fun. Gabriel raised his eyebrows. Yeah, right? What about you? You're 22. As far as I can tell, you didn't do that much partying and clubbing either. Oh, he was right. That was true, Lori sighed. You're right, I didn't. It was funny how they were both alike in certain ways, but different too. If I'm going to live my life, you should too. He added, and Lori shrugged. Oh, she didn't think so. But... She hesitated, and Gabriel cut her off. No excuses. We should go to a club together when we're back from Canada, he said, and her eyes widened. No, I actually have no outfit that would be considered appropriate enough for the club. Gabriel shook his head. He looked determined, like he wasn't going to take no for an answer. Then you'd buy one, as many as you need. Oh, you can't be serious, Gabriel. I am. I'm actually very serious, he said as his voice deepened. With Amelia. I'm sure Amelia would be fine without you for one night. Jenny or Sylvia would be more than happy to fill in. Lori sighed. A club. An actual club. Weird that she had not been in one before. She was excited as well as scared, but she nodded her head. Good, then it's settled. Clubbing, partying, we'll try everything. Together, he added as he kissed her hand and gently let it go. Lori's cheeks blushed furiously, suddenly feeling bereft without the warmth of his hands. Together, she repeated. I think I'll be going to bed now, she said as she looked at the half-full bottle of wine and decided that the wine might have started to take effect, and she wanted to sleep the rest off. Me too, Gabriel said. He stood up and cleared the bottle of wine and their wine glasses from the table. I'll see you upstairs. He told her so she wouldn't have to clean up, and Lori went upstairs. She stopped by the baby room. Amelia was still peacefully sleeping. Then she stopped by her room. The door had been fixed, and she just went in to pick a nightshirt and pajama shorts. She was still sleeping in Gabriel's room. Gabriel wasn't complaining, and she liked sleeping in his room. Although she could tell it was probably very weird. It would be weird to anyone else. They were very much living like a couple. And now Gabriel told her he was attracted to her. Her belly did flip-flops just thinking about it. He was attracted to her, and he actually said it to her face. After everything she told him about herself and her past, she didn't think he'd ever look at her that way. In fact, a part of her still didn't believe she deserved to be looked at that way. Gabriel was not in his room when she walked in with a change of clothes, but he walked in shortly after, slowly taking off the muscle shirt he was wearing. Lori shamelessly ogled him, unable to pull her eyes away. Sorry, it's a bit hot tonight, he said as he settled into bed, and Lori nodded. Really? I actually feel quite cold, she said, and he patted the bed. Come on, I'll keep you warm then. Lori froze, standing transfixed in the same spot with her eyes wide at Gabriel's statement. Gabriel glanced at her and noticed she looked shocked. I didn't mean it that way. He corrected himself, and Lori quickly shook her head. No, I actually didn't take any offense. I'm just surprised you offered, she said as she climbed into the bed. Why are you surprised that I offered? Gabriel asked, and Lori slowly turned. They were so close now, close enough that she could see his face, the stubble that was growing in, strands of his hair in his face, and his long eyelashes, longer than hers probably. She thought as she felt the insane urge to touch them. Lori shrugged. I don't know. I just didn't expect it, she whispered. So would you like me to keep you warm? He asked again, and Lori slightly nodded. Yes, she said, and he murmured that she should turn around. When she did, he placed his arms around her, almost as if he was wrapping her in a big hug. He was spooning her. She didn't think she had ever had someone she was genuinely attracted to hug her that way before. It felt great. It felt safe and warm. Oh, Gabriel was very warm. She could feel the heat radiating from his hard, smooth chest onto her back. Good night, Lori, he whispered, his hot breath tickling her ears. Good night, Gabriel. Jared's in town, Alonso said as he handed Asher the package. The deal was done. Asher should be out of Colorado before the next morning. It wasn't like he had much to do there anyways. The only reason why he was in Denver in the first place was because of Lori. He felt bad. He felt genuinely bad that he had left her when he saw that she was pregnant. But he didn't know what to do. He had freaked out seeing how huge her belly was. He couldn't even believe it was his. Jared had tried to reassure him that it might not be his baby, but Asher knew it was. Lori could be many things, but she wasn't a slut. She didn't sleep around. Jared was just being bitter. But after seeing her at that restaurant with the tall, wealthy dude, he honestly wasn't sure of what to think anymore. How did she even meet such a man? Was she now sleeping with men for money? And where was his baby? He needed more information, and he was certain Jared would know what was going on. But after their fallout, Asher wasn't sure he ever wanted to speak to Jared ever again. It had all started when Asher brought over Lori to his apartment. That was when their relationship became strained. He thought it was because Jared didn't like how he was treating his sister. But no, it was much more worse. When Lori had escaped and Asher had lashed out angrily, Jared tried to kiss him. He pushed Jared away, and he apologized that it was a mistake. Asher let it slide, but Jared's jealousy for Lori had only grown worse when he found out Lori was pregnant. He told Jared he was thinking of getting her back. He started envisioning a life with Lori and his son. He couldn't help but think about all of it. Jared didn't seem to agree. In fact, he got angry, and Asher felt it was the weirdest thing that he was so angry. But then he saw what had happened and what needed to be done. Jared was in love with him. He had been in love with him ever since he took him in and invited him to his gang. That was why he rose quickly to the top of his ranks, because he would do anything for Asher's validation. When Asher took a liking to Lori, it only made him hate her more, and he directed his vitriol at her. He was relieved when he cut him off. He sent him out of the gang and vowed to stop doing business with him. Now it had been months, but he needed Jared's help. There was no one else that could trace down Lori and find her and his son for him. No one else but Jared. The next morning, Lori woke up in Gabriel's arms, resting on top of his chest. She didn't know when they had switched positions, but she was pleasantly surprised that she woke up early enough for Gabriel to still be in bed. Which was quite a feat, to be honest, because all the times she had slept in his room, she always woke up to an empty bed. Gabriel stirred and opened his eyes. "You're awake," he said as he yawned. Lori gently pulled away from him. "And you're still in bed." Gabriel said as he buried his face in his pillow. "Good morning," Lori said as she climbed out of the bed. She didn't wake up all through the night. Jenny and Sylvia had been alternating Amelia's night feeds just so she could sleep better. "Good morning," Gabriel murmured as she walked out of the room and straight into the baby's room. Sylvia was awake and already in the room. "Good morning, Sylvia." "Good morning, Lori," she said as she looked up from the table where she was neatly folding Amelia's clean laundry. "I hope she didn't give you much trouble," she asked as she peeped in the crib and saw that Amelia was still sleeping. "Not really. She just woke up to feed around 4 a.m. and I gave her a bottle. Then I rocked her for some time before she went back to sleep." "Okay, thank you for your help," she said, and Sylvia shrugged. "No problem," she said as she walked out of the room. She checked the baby's wardrobe to bring out an outfit for the day for her. She would wake her up later, then after that, she would change her diaper and then feed her. She was mentally planning her day in her head when Gabriel walked in. "She's still asleep?" he asked, and Lori nodded. "Yeah." "Okay, that's good. I'll be going out to make arrangements for our trip to Canada. You should start packing." "Okay. How many days will we be there?" I don't think we'll spend any more than 3 days." Lori nodded. "It's cold right now over there, so pack a lot of coats." Okay. They didn't leave for their flight till later in the evening. Lori packed all day. It was her first time traveling with a baby, and she had been so scared of forgetting to pack something important, so she had gone over everything she packed over and over, obsessing over each item and wondering if she needed them or not. Sylvia also helped. They narrowed down the list of things she would need and the things she would not need to pack. She also quickly went out to buy coats for herself. She didn't pack any, so she went to a store to get some. Gabriel mentioned it was very cold where they were going, even though it was April. Gabriel had mentioned something about the place snowing all year. After they had packed and got their things ready, Tony drove them to the airport. Lori sat at the back with the baby. Amelia, who had probably suspected that something was going on, was fussy all through the ride, refusing to stay in her car seat and staying in Lori's arms. They reached a private jet hangar 30 minutes later, and Lori's jaw dropped when she saw that they would be taking a private jet. Whew! She had never even flown business class or first class before, but she was going to be in a private jet? It was insane. She was going to be flying in a private jet. Insane. Are you good? Gabriel asked her moments later when they walked across the runway towards the private jet. Lori nodded. Tony had grabbed their luggage while Gabriel had grabbed Amelia's car seat. Yes, I didn't know you owned a private jet, Gabriel shrugged. It didn't come up, but yeah, I own one. 2, actually. He added, and Lori simply nodded. Wow, I've never been on a private jet before, she said, and Gabriel smiled at her. Well, there's a first time for everything. There truly was. Lori thought as she stepped into the jet. Who would have ever thought she'd be in a private jet, or actually going to Canada? She had never been out of the country before in her whole life. The thought of traveling always appealed to her, but she didn't have any money, never did, and she didn't even believe she would ever make enough money to travel. She just wanted to get by in life. The flight to Canada took a total of 4 hours. Not that she was actually counting, though, because Amelia was nervous and fussy throughout the entire flight, and Lori did everything to calm her down. She basically carried her throughout the entire flight. Gabriel helped, at least he tried to, but he couldn't really calm her down, at least not the way Lori would. Besides, it was her job too, so she wasn't complaining. They arrived at Calgary, Canada, few minutes to 10, and when they were finally done at the airport with clearance and all, they left for their hotel. When they finally reached their hotel room, Lori was exhausted. Thoroughly. Gabriel had booked a whole suite for them. The suite was large, not as large as an average suite, but large enough in Gabriel's opinion. It was clean and spacious, with a large 4-poster bed, a TV, a living room area with a couch that doubled as a bed, and a large bathroom, a hot tub, and a view. As he had predicted, it was very cold, but the suite had a fireplace and central heating. Lori got to changing Amelia's clothes for bed in the makeshift bassinet she brought with. Amelia had been fussy all through the night. It was understandable. It was her first flight, and the altitude must have spooked her a little. Overall, she gave Lori a hard time as she wouldn't stop crying. Gabriel could see that Lori was already tired. Want anything for dinner? He asked as she changed her into a plain white onesie after putting on a fresh diaper for her. Lori shook her head. I'm not sure. Maybe a cup of coffee would do. She murmured. It was so cold. She had dressed warm enough for the cold, but she was never fully expected how cold it was when they landed. And it was actually snowed that night. She was glad she had at least dressed the baby appropriately, fearing that she might catch a cold, but Amelia was just fine. And when they got into their warm and toasty hotel suite, she felt much better. Anything else? Gabriel asked, and she shrugged. I'm actually not very hungry. I'm so tired. All I want to do is to sleep, she said, and Gabriel nodded. Me too. I'll ring room service to bring up a cup of coffee for you, he said as he walked to the living room where the phone was. Lori walked into the bathroom with a change of clothes, eager to settle into the warm covers. She was completely exhausted. Their coffee arrived minutes later, and Lori quickly found out that she actually didn't really want the coffee. She just needed something hot to drink. After a few sips, she dropped the cup and checked on Amelia. Gabriel walked up to her. Don't worry, I know you're tired. Just go to bed and I'll take care of her. Really? Lori asked as she rubbed at her sleepy eyes, and Gabriel nodded. Yes, don't worry, he said, and she murmured a thanks, and she switched off the bedside lamp, fell on the bed, and buried herself inside the covers. It didn't take much more for her to fall asleep. Vara had arrived early. Sabine didn't know if she could interpret that as bad news. She was hoping for good news anyways. Her meeting with Gabriel had left her in high spirits. He had fell into her hands. Now all that was left was for her to find something to trap him with. She was not surprised when he had reached out to her asking for information about Susie's family. It was inevitable. She had planted the seed and left it to germinate. Her only surprise was that he had contacted her sooner than she expected. She wasn't expecting him to be genuinely curious for another few weeks, months even, when he had time to really think on it. But his urgency was a cause of concern for her. Her ploy to use her knowledge of Susie's family against him was pure coincidence. Sabine didn't even know who Susie was, but Vara did. And Vara knew about Susie's family. Vara was a sort of old acquaintance for Susie. They were friends when they were much younger, but after Susie's pack started having problems, it became harder to reach her. When Sabine's spies had confirmed that Gabriel's illegitimate child was conceived by Susie, Vara had been shocked, especially since she was also unaware of the news that Susie died during childbirth. Vara had been the one to break it to Susie's mother. Even though, according to Vara, Susie had not spoken to her mother in years. They didn't have a very good relationship, and it was mostly her mother's fault. Still, she had reveled in throwing the fact that Gabriel knew nothing about the mother of his daughter's family in his face, and that she knew more than he did. Of course, that would bother him. She knew he would also want to do the right thing and start to seek out Susie's family. Which he did right away, much more sooner than she anticipated. She had given him the name and the last 2 addresses of Susie's mother's home that she had been able to acquire, all thanks to Vara. She had also asked for his word in return. He should have said no. It was the logical thing any alpha would do, knowing how valid their word was. But he didn't, and now she had endless ways to end him. Just thinking about it made her tingle. "Did you find anything?" she asked Vara, who nodded. She dropped a brown envelope on her table. Sabine put out her cigarette, leaving the stub on the floor while she picked up the envelope with her crimson-red nails. She reached in and pulled out a couple of pictures. She looked at them for a while and turned to Vara. "What is this?" Vara shrugged, looking bored already. "Our spies at the hangar saw Gabriel Kane heading for his private jet. He wasn't alone. There was a woman with him and his daughter." Sabine looked at the photos again, anger stirring up in her. The photos showed Gabriel holding a baby carrier with the baby inside, a man in front of them who seemed to be helping with their luggage, and a small petite woman next to him. Her raven black hair was blowing in the wind, and Sabine couldn't see her face, but in the photos she and Gabriel were staring at each other. He even holds her in one of the pictures. "And we don't know who the woman is? Isn't there any way of finding out?" Vara sighed. "No, not really. Not if Gabriel's staff and employees are members of his pack, so even if they knew who this woman is, they would never say a word. The only other way of finding her is using Chrissy Garcia." Sabine jerked towards her. "Susie's mother?" Vara nodded. "I'd assume the woman is important enough for Gabriel to take her on the trip. Since she is, we have to find out what she means to him and who she is. For the right price, Chrissy Garcia would sing like a canary," Vara said with a sly smile on her face. Gabriel woke up well-rested the next morning. He had tried to get out of bed twice when Amelia got fussy, but despite his protests, Lori promised to handle it. So when he woke up and still found her sleeping, he decided to give her more time to sleep. She would not be accompanying him anyways. He had thought long and hard about it and decided that it was very risky for him to bring her along. Especially since there would be certain conversations that he wouldn't be able to talk about in front of her. He would ask her to stay in the hotel, then see Mrs. Chrissy Garcia, taking her granddaughter with him. He had decided on an escort last minute, feeling weird that he had traveled without Draco by his side. Gabriel couldn't remember the last time he had traveled without Draco. His escort would be arriving with a car in the next few hours, and he only had little time to get there. Sabine had not told him much, but from what she described, Susie wasn't in good terms with her mother, but her mother had tried to reconcile with her. Gabriel didn't know what her mother did that was so serious, but he has decided it wasn't really his business. He was more concerned about Amelia than any other thing. Well, Amelia and Lori now. He thought as he looked at the beautiful woman sleeping on the bed. He would ask questions. He would even pay Mrs. Garcia if she wanted payment. Amelia was still sleeping, so he decided to let her sleep some more while he took a shower. Lori stirred a bit, rubbing at her sleepy eyes. She patted the bed and noticed that it was empty. She rolled to the other side to check on Amelia in the makeshift bassinet and found out that she was still sleeping. Oh, she was still quite tired. She could hear the shower running. Gabriel must be getting ready to leave then, she thought as she jumped out of the bed. In front of the vanity mirror, she loosened her hair from bun and brushed it. She was still quite tired as hell. The baby had been so fussy, and the night she had with Amelia not interrupting her sleep had made her forget just how many times she had to wake up and take care of her in the night. It was why she had refused Gabriel's help when he asked. She felt like she should do it. Besides, the only reason Amelia was fussy in the first place was because she was in a new environment. She was probably very confused and struggling to grasp why they were moving around so quickly. She walked to the living room and called room service. Amelia would be waking up anytime soon, and she needed to make her bottle. She needed some hot water and also breakfast. She didn't eat anything, although she had some food on the flight, though it was only complimentary pastries. She was in the living room sorting out Amelia's outfit for the day when the door of the bathroom opened and Gabriel came out. Lori stared at him. He was dripping wet and wearing a towel. The towel was wrapped tightly around his waist, but low enough for Lori to see his V-line, and when he turned towards her. Oh God, she was staring again. She looked down, focusing on the clothes she was picking out, and waited until Gabriel directed his gaze at her. Hey, you're awake. Lori nodded. Yay, good morning. Good morning. I actually didn't know you'd be awake this early. I thought you'd sleep in after all the stress. Lori shrugged. I heard you in the shower and woke up. Besides, we're leaving soon, right? Gabriel grimaced. He walked closer to her. There was a towel around his shoulder and he used it to dry his hair. That's the thing. I actually want you to stay in the hotel. What? Why? Lori asked as she dropped the clothes. Lori will be meeting her grandmother today, and I think she might find it weird that you're with me. I don't want her to make any stupid assumptions. That didn't sound right, as Lori stood up, facing him with her arms on her waist. What assumptions? You just tell her that I'm Amelia's nanny. I know, but it's not as easy as it sounds. It sounds very easy, Gabriel. Lori gave him a pointed look. What are you going to do when you need to feed her? I don't think I packed a vacuum flask. She should have. She should have really packed one, but Sylvia had convinced her it wasn't necessary, and she truly didn't think it was anyways. Gabriel shrugged. We'll be gone for only a few hours. I doubt she'd need to feed. But what if she does? Lori persisted, and Gabriel shrugged. Okay, I'll go buy a vacuum flask. Lori sighed. It just didn't make sense for her nor to go. Lori, please try and understand. Besides, we'd be gone for a few hours and back very soon. I actually don't plan to stay that long. Lori nodded. Okay, I'll pack a bag for you. Thank you. Gabriel said, in the meantime, you should get some rest. I know you still need to sleep. Well, that bit was true anyways. She did need to sleep, but she didn't understand why she couldn't come along. Gabriel left the hotel an hour later. Even while he was leaving, Lori had fussed over the baby all through while she saw them off to the car. She kept checking if the baby was warm enough and reminding him of how to change the baby's diaper, since there was going to be no makeshift diaper table. He found it cute that she was being so fussy over Amelia, almost like she was her mum. She also seemed to be really agitated that he was leaving without her. He wished there was a better way to allay her fears, but the topics he wanted to discuss to Mrs. Garcia were private. The woman would also probably find it weird that he had a human nanny too. There were too many questions that would be left unanswered and look too suspicious. It was better he went without her. It wasn't his first time going out with the baby, but he didn't go out with the baby very often, so the diaper bag that Lori had given him to carry was heavy. He wondered if it was because she had packed unnecessary things. They were lucky the hotel had given them a vacuum flask they could borrow, so that settled the idea of what Amelia would eat if she was hungry. Amelia seemed to be content to sleep after causing so much trouble the night before, but Gabriel didn't have any problem with that. Shortly after they arrived at a small gray house at the end of a street, It was an old, dilapidated house, and somehow Gabriel couldn't imagine Susie ever living there. Susie, with all her high-handedness, the escort he had hired, who was a distant friend of Draco and a member of another pack that was allied with them, was called Luco. Gabriel didn't know what the name meant, but he assumed it was a nickname. Luco went to the house to knock first, see if anyone was home, before Gabriel brought Amelia out of the car. The escort came back to the car. "She's in. She's anxious to meet you," he stated. Gabriel looked at the house and found a woman standing at the front porch. He couldn't see much of her, but she had a long shawl draped over her shoulders and over her head. Luco grabbed the diaper bag and Gabriel grabbed the baby carrier. They both walked towards the house. The woman started walking towards them too. As she got closer, he could see more of her face. Honey brown eyes like that of Susie, a small heart-shaped face and light blonde hair peeking out from underneath her shawl. She looked like Susie. Gabriel took a sniff, and she smelled wolf too. The woman bowed. "Alpha Kane, it is an honor," she said, and Gabriel nodded. Luco must have told her who he was, and he was also relieved that he had quickly signaled Luco not to give him the same treatment in front of Lori. "Mrs. Chrissy Garcia, I'm sorry we haven't been privileged to meet earlier. My name is Gabriel Kane," he said, and the woman shrugged. Even though she looked somewhat excited to see him, he could tell she was still slightly confused that he would visit her. "I knew your daughter, Susie," the woman paled. "I only recently heard about her death. You see, Susie and I weren't close." Gabriel knew. "I know. Unfortunately, she didn't tell me anything about you." "I'm here to introduce someone to you, Mrs. Garcia," he said as he glanced at the baby carrier in his hand. The woman looked at the car seat and grew still. "Susie, she died during childbirth." Mrs. Garcia gasped. "This is her daughter, Amelia Susanna," Gabriel said as he removed the blanket that covered the baby carrier, showing Amelia to her grandmother. The woman gasped again, tears pooling in her eyes as she leaned in. "Come in. Oh, please come in," she said as she pointed to her house. Gabriel nodded and followed her lead. The house was even worse than he had imagined, small, unorganized, with a musty smell. "I'm sorry for the mess," the woman pleaded as she dusted a sofa for him to sit down. Gabriel did while dropping the baby carrier in front of him. Amelia was still sleeping. Good. The woman rushed inside, then came out with what seemed to be a photo album. Gabriel had no idea why she brought it out, but she should probably know he wasn't there to check pictures. He had more pressing matters. "She looks so much like Susie when she was younger. See?" the woman said as she flipped the pages of the photo album to show a baby picture of Susie. Gabriel looked at it and nodded. Yes, he could see the resemblance. "I can see the resemblance." The woman nodded, then sat across from him. Luco stood guard at the door. "Mrs. Garcia, Susie never talked about you, and it was very hard finding you because of your pack," he started. "Yes, my pack is the Lightpaw Pack. We have been fighting internal conflicts for years now, and it has taken a great toll on us. It was one of the reasons Susie left. That and the fact that I lied to her about who her birth father was." Gabriel nodded. "Susie was a difficult child. We didn't really get along, and I had her when I was so young, so I made so many mistakes. I tried so many times to reach out and apologize to her after everything that happened, but she didn't reply." "I'm sorry." "Sorry about that. How did you two meet?" she asked, and Gabriel shrugged. "Oh, at an Alpha's convention. We actually didn't know each other well. We had very brief fling, and you see, one thing led to another." "Oh," the woman said, and Gabriel nodded. "But that's not really why I'm here. I actually have a serious issue to discuss with you, Mrs. Garcia." The woman looked baffled, but nodded her head. "Go on." "Amelia, she's been experiencing growth spurts. Is there any history of that in your family?" "Her doctor told us to look into Susie's medical history." Mrs. Garcia looked at the photos of Susie again and shook her head. "Now, I remember when I had Susie, she was a perfect, healthy baby. She didn't experience a single growth spurt." "What?" Gabriel asked, and Mrs. Garcia nodded. "It's actually perfectly normal for pups in our pack. We just don't experience growth spurts. It's weird that Amelia is experiencing that. What about you? Did you experience growth spurts?" "I did," Gabriel said, now totally confused and slightly angry that he might have come all the way to Canada for nothing. Nothing at all. although it wasn't as early. My parents said I had one when I was 6 months old. Mrs. Garcia nodded. I'll admit it is strange she is having one so early. Gabriel sighed. Is there anything else about Susie's medical history that I should know? He asked, and the woman shrugged. Not that many. We are prone to difficult births in our families. If Susie had given birth in the traditional family way, she might still be alive. But that's besides that. I assume you will have to deal with the asthma. She'll grow out of it after her first shift. Mrs. Garcia said, and Gabriel shook his head. No, Amelia doesn't have asthma. She should. Mrs. Garcia said, and Gabriel shook his head again. I'm telling you, she doesn't have asthma. All kids in the Garcia line are born with asthma. Maybe it hasn't come up yet. It'll probably come up when she's older, but you should be seeing the signs already. Well, I'm speaking to you that as a matter of fact, Amelia doesn't have asthma. Gabriel insisted, mildly getting angry of what the woman was insinuating. Maybe she won't have any because of me. Gabriel added, and Mrs. Garcia didn't look convinced. I don't think so. We all had it. Every baby had it. Every one of them, even the ones that married other members of stronger packs. It probably hasn't really shown up yet. Mrs. Garcia waved it away. She was convinced that she was right. Gabriel watched her closely. He had come here for answers and gotten even more confused. The woman couldn't seem to give him any important or discerning information. How the hell was he supposed to find out why Amelia was having growth spurts now? What the hell was he supposed to do? Can I hold her? Mrs. Garcia asked quietly, and Gabriel nodded. He let the woman hold her granddaughter, and he sat there deep in thoughts. If he had known that this was the quality of information he would be getting, he wouldn't have made such a stupid promise to Sabine in the first place. There was nothing here for him in Canada. Nothing at all. His visit had been fruitless. It was a waste of time and energy. At least Amelia got to meet her grandmother. But at what cost? Susie had stayed away for a reason, and he wished he knew that reason before ever coming to visit her. Oh, she's so precious! The woman cooed as she rocked Amelia in her arms. I'm sure it mustn't be easy, raising her all alone. Gabriel sighed. It hasn't, he admitted, and the woman sighed. It was a lie. With Laurie's help, it had certainly been very easy. He just chose not to admit that. I could help. I didn't have much of a relationship with my daughter. I wouldn't want that to happen with my granddaughter. Whenever you're in America, you're free to drop by and see her, Gabriel said, and the woman nodded. She still looked a bit unconvinced. How long will you stay in Canada? Gabriel shrugged. I'd probably leave today or tomorrow. So soon? The woman gasped and Gabriel nodded. I'm a very busy man. Oh, I'd like to see her one last time before you leave. Please. The woman pleaded and Gabriel sat still, deep in thought, still pissed at himself. Where are you staying? I can come visit before you leave. She persisted, and Gabriel wondered if it was a good idea. No, it wasn't, but he felt bad denying her that pleasure. We're staying at Wyndham. Oh, okay. Would you mind me coming by tomorrow before you leave? She asked, and Gabriel nodded. No problem. Luco would come pick you up, he said, and the woman nodded eagerly. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm afraid we have to leave now, Mrs. Garcia. Thank you for your time, he said as he stretched out his hand for Amelia. The woman reluctantly gave the baby back to her father, and Gabriel felt relieved with her in his arms. Oh, it's no problem. It's a pleasure. I'm glad Susie had the good sense to get knocked up by the alpha of one of the most revered pack in the continent. It's the one good thing she did right, the woman murmured. Gabriel made no comment as he walked out of the house with Amelia back in her baby carrier. He was glad it was over, really. Mrs. Garcia, I'd be glad if you could take a look at your family's medical records for me to reconfirm everything you've said. I'd really appreciate it. He said, and she nodded. I will. I'll have another look. Gabriel fished out his business card. This is my card. It has my number. You call me when you finally find something or tell me tomorrow before I leave. The woman nodded. Okay. He also reached out into his coat for a sealed envelope. The woman was living in a house that was falling apart. She probably needed some help with money. He had some money changed to Canadian dollars when he arrived. Here, thank you for your time. She took the envelope and opened it, her eyes widened. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Gabriel. Is it okay if I call you Gabriel? I feel as though you're my son-in-law already, she asked as she practically started jumping. Son-in-law? Oh no, no possible way she could think of him that way. You can call me Gabriel, but please don't think of me as your son-in-law. Susie and I were never married. The woman cackled. The money seemed to have loosened her up. Oh, I know. Mrs. Garcia, I'd appreciate your discretion with this. Not many people know about my daughter or her mother, he said, and she nodded. Trust me, my lips are sealed, she assured him. Thank you. While he walked back to the car with Luco in front, a thought popped in his head. Mrs. Garcia, do you know a woman named Sabine Reinhard? She is the alpha of Skepter Kun. The woman shrugged. No, I don't know her. Gabriel sighed. How then did Sabine know her? He at least needed to find that out. But her pack? I know someone who's in her pack. Who? I don't think you'll know her, but she and Susie used to be friends. Her name is Vara. She was the one who told me of Susie's death. Vara. So it was Vara who knew about Susie. Thank you again for your time, Gabriel said as he entered the car with Emilia. Well, he was glad he was done with all that. The hotel had a hot tub. Lori had no idea. She had slept a little more when Gabriel and Emilia left, but she was too restless, so she had breakfast. She found the hot tub and then decided to go for a dip in it. She stripped down to her black bra and panties, slowly examining herself in the mirror. Her C-section scar ran across her lower belly. The scar was no longer red. Its color was starting to fade. She had not really cared much about how her body had changed after pregnancy. She didn't really like to think about it. But looking at herself in the mirror, she could see the changes. Her breasts were fuller than they had ever been. She now had stretch marks on her belly. They were faint, but they were there. She had never had to deal with those before. Lori was always thin, but now she had them. The nurse had mentioned something about it all fading after, but she wasn't so sure they would. Even if they didn't, she didn't think she'd really care. She thought as she got into the hot tub. The water was also hot, deliciously hot. She settled in the tub and closed her eyes. Oh, she could really soak in it for hours. She was barely in it for 5 minutes when she heard the door to the suite click open. Lori, we're back, Gabriel called out, and she froze. I'm in the hot tub, Lori called out quickly, embarrassed as she swiftly jumped out of the tub and wrapped the first towel she could see around herself. Luckily, her clothes were still with her, so she put them back on, despite the fact that she was still wet. She quickly tried to dry as much water off her skin as she could. She ran out of the bathroom. Gabriel and Emilia were back. How was it? She asked as he sat down on the sofa. He set the baby carrier next to him while he pulled off his shoes. Lori couldn't help but notice that he looked like wasn't in a good mood. Good. Emilia slept all through. Then she woke up when we got to the hotel, he said, and Lori went to peep at the baby in the baby carrier. Emilia was sucking on a pacifier. Is everything okay? She asked as she saw that he looked a bit off. He was reclined on the sofa while he ran his hand through his hair and sighed. Gabriel nodded. Yes, just not what I was expecting, he answered. He looked up at her and saw that her hair was wet. What happened? Did I interrupt you? He asked, and she shrugged. No, not really. I was just trying out the hot tub. Oh, well, don't let me stop you then, he murmured, and she shook her head. Oh, she couldn't go back in there now with the knowledge that he was in the room. That would be weird. At least for her. Oh no, don't worry about that. Maybe another time, she said as she picked the baby up. She knew they had only been gone for a long time, but she missed her so much already. She smothered the baby with kisses and turned to Gabriel. Did you find anything? Gabriel shrugged. Nothing worth finding. Luckily, Emilia doesn't have anything in her medical history that is particularly concerning. Lori nodded. That was good then. That's good. Right? She asked, and Gabriel nodded. It is. Besides, Emilia got to meet her grandmother. Okay. How was she? Lori asked, and Gabriel shrugged. She seemed okay, but she also told me she and Susie had not talked in years. Anyways, we're leaving tomorrow. Yes, finally. She couldn't wait to be back home. Home. Even though it wasn't really her home, she was already so fond of the place. She knew that she shouldn't. She was a nanny and she was replaceable, but she had still grown attached to it. She couldn't help it. Okay, I'll pack tonight, she replied. He was supposed to have left Colorado. Ordinarily, he shouldn't have spent an extra day, but someone tipped him off about Jared's location, and he had no choice but to check it out. He knocked at least 3 times at Jared's motel room door before Jared came to open it. When the door opened and Jared saw his face, he stepped back a little. "Asher?" he said, and Asher pushed him out of his way as he entered the room. "Ha, this place looks like a dump," he said as he took a look at the messy sheets on the bed and the coffee table that was filled with takeout boxes. Well, what? How have you been, Jared?" Jared shrugged. "Been good. How's business?" Asher nodded. He brought out a cigarette pack from his pocket and offered Jared one. Jared took it with shaky hands. He was still wondering about how Asher managed to find him, or why he even found him in the first place. He knew it would have something to do with Lori. "Business is good. Got new contacts here. I think I might come here more often," he said, and Jared nodded. Jared's eyes darted all around the room. He left his gun in the bedside drawer. He should have kept it closer to him. He wondered if Asher had somehow found Lori and found out that he was the one who pushed her down the stairs. Did he know that yet? Was he here to kill him? He couldn't read his face well enough to tell. "Well, I'm sure you already know why I'm here. I don't intend to stay long," he said, and Jared nodded. "Of course. You're here about Lori, right?" "Yes. What else did you think I was here for?" "Idle chit-chat," Asher exclaimed as he busted into laughter. Jared's fists hardened. "What if I decide to not tell you anything about her? What you gonna do then?" "Oh, you're not going to do that. I know you won't." Asher took a turn around the room. It was truly filthy. He wondered just how long Jared had been living in the dump for it to look so messy. "Besides, I hear you've been struggling lately. You've been owing your suppliers money, living in the dump. I might be able to help with that," Asher said as he took a puff of his cigarette. Jared glared at him. "You were the one who cut me off." "Yes, I did. Because you were acting fucking weird, man. You were freaking me out." "What was I supposed to do?" he asked, and Jared sighed. He collapsed on the bed. His shoulder was slumped and his expression was blank. He would just have to be straightforward with Asher. "Well, if you're looking for Lori, I can't find her either. She hasn't been in her apartment in weeks." Asher nodded. "Okay. The baby. What about the baby?" Jared chuckled. "You're still on that. I thought you didn't want it." "I never said that," Asher fired back. Jared continued laughing. "Well, if you must know, she lost the baby." "What? Lori lost his baby?" Asher thought as he froze on the spot. As stupid as it sounded, a part of him had been excited, happy even that he was having a child. He had already dreamed of life with his son and Lori. "You sad?" "On. It's a good thing she did, though. That baby would have been so messed up." "Shut up," Asher demanded as he walked closer to Jared, and Jared just laughed. No, actually, he wasn't going to shut up. Asher felt like he could just waltz in people's lives, use them and dump them when he decided they had no use for him anymore. But somehow he still managed to go back to them and attempt to do the same shit all over again. He was growing tired of it. "You raped her, Asher. Countless times. That baby was not a product of love or anything good. Hell, I'm sure even Lori herself didn't want it. If you look at it from another point of view, I think God did her a favor," he said. Before he could move out of the way, Asher charged at him and punched him in the face. Jared fell face-palm on the sheets. Ouch, that hurt. He groaned, and he raised his head slowly from the sheets and touched his mouth and found out that he was bleeding. Fuck. He was just recovering from the last beating he got at the hands of some junkie who was owing him money, and now Asher felt like he could treat him like shit on top, all of that? Don't ever talk to me like that. Ever. Asher growled, and Jared spat out the blood on the dirty rug. He stayed quiet. He was smart enough to. Asher had a bad temper, even worse than his, and the things he could do when he was angry, Jared didn't want to even think about it. He paced around the room, his breathing heavy and labored till he finally calmed down and stood in front of Jared again. He took a deep sigh and asked Jared another question. "Now, do you know where she is?" "I ran into her at a fancy restaurant with some man. I don't know who he is," Asher added. Jared shook his head. "I told you already, she's not even in the apartment she paid for." Gabriel was in a mood the rest of the night. He stayed up on his laptop working on the couch till 1 a.m. And when he finally went to bed, he slept on the sofa. Lori wondered if his current mood was because of the visit. Nevertheless, his mood bothered her greatly. She didn't like tiptoeing around people's moods because she was always too fixated on what she would say or do that could eventually annoy them. The next morning he was better, helping her with baby and making jokes about how they would go club hopping when they landed. He was better, but she still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with him. They had breakfast in silence, and a man named Luco arrived to drive them to the airport. Lori changed into a pair of pants, white shirt, and paired with a green sweater she had bought recently while shopping for a coat. Lori held the baby while Luco and a front man helped with their luggage. Finally, they were leaving, she thought, as they all walked inside the elevator. Certainly not the kind of travel experience she was expecting, but it was fair. It was really fair. And at least she had a chance to travel out of the country for once. She should probably start saving towards traveling, she thought as the elevator dinged and they arrived at the hotel lobby. If she saved up at least half or more than what she was making, she could probably have enough to travel to at least 3 countries or even more. Who knows? It all depended on how long she kept being a nanny. She was still deep in thoughts and didn't know when Gabriel put a hand in front of her. "What?" she asked as he stopped her. "Wait here," he told her as he walked away from her. Lori looked ahead and saw him walking towards a woman sitting at the lobby. Who was that? Was that Amelia's grandmother? "Mrs. Garcia, what are you doing here?" he asked, and the woman shrugged, her eyes traveling to the other end of the room where there was a young woman holding her granddaughter. She bowed slightly. "You said you were leaving today and I decided to come say hello before you left. Besides, you said you would send the car to pick me up. I waited for a while, but it never came." She trailed off as she spotted Luco next to the woman, standing rigid. Gabriel bristled. It was true. After hearing that Vara was connected to the woman, he thought it was a bad idea for him to see Mrs. Garcia again. He was hoping to give her a call after they landed to apologize for her not being able to say goodbye to her granddaughter, but she beat him to it. "It slipped my mind. I'm sure Luco also forgot." Gabriel lied smoothly and the woman nodded. She clutched her purse close to her. Every now and then her eyes would dart to the side where Lori was standing with the baby. "I also tried the number that was on your business card, but nobody picked up." That was because he gave her his work phone and he had told his secretary to only forward important calls from known contacts. "I'm sorry about that, Mrs. Garcia." "Are you here because you found something about Susie's medical history?" "Did you manage to find anything about her?" Mrs. Garcia shook her head. "No. I even looked into her father's medical history, but I couldn't find anything of the sort." Gabriel suddenly remembered the words of the woman. She had told him that Susie and her had a fallout with her when she discovered who her father was. He wondered if it was of any importance to ask who exactly the man was. Maybe it could help him. "You mentioned something about Susie being angry about who her father was. Tell me, who was her father?" he asked, and Mrs. Garcia shrugged. "Oh, you don't really want to know, do you?" The woman rubbed her face anxiously. "I do. I think it's quite important." Mrs. Garcia was silent for a few seconds before sighing. "He was part of our pack, Chester Maynard, and he was also my stepbrother." Gabriel paled. "Ugh, he shouldn't have asked. He really shouldn't have." "You had a child with your stepbrother?" he asked, and she shrugged. "I know, it sounds bad, but we were young and we were foolish, and my mother was dead. He was the only one I could confide in." Gabriel sighed. He didn't even feel like pursuing the issue anymore. "No, who's that woman over there?" Mrs. Garcia asked as she looked at Lori again. "My friend." Gabriel answered in a clipped tone. "We're leaving for the airport now." "Oh, okay. Can I say goodbye to Amelia before you leave? It'll only take a minute." The woman said as she made a beeline for Lori and the baby, and Gabriel grabbed her arm. "Wait here. I'll bring her to you," he said hastily. The woman looked at him weirdly but didn't say anything. Gabriel walked towards Lori. "Is that Susie's mother?" she asked, and Gabriel nodded. "She wants to say goodbye to Amelia before we leave." "Wait here," he instructed as he took the baby from her arms. Lori frowned. Why was he being so weird about everything? Lori asked as she watched him walk away with Amelia in his arms. After a while, he came back with the baby, and the woman turned around and left the hotel. Gabriel made sure he watched her leave before walking back to Lori. Are you ready? He asked, and she nodded. Okay, let's go home, he asked as he stretched out his hand to her. Lori took his hand in hers, and they walked towards the exit together. What did you find? Vara asked as she picked up the call on the first ring, putting the call on loudspeaker. She was in Sabine's room, where Sabine was lying in bed with a silk robe and a sleeping naked man on her bed. You were right, there was a woman with him. How does she look like? Did you get to see her? Mrs. Garcia shook her head. No, he kept her far away from me, and when I asked him who she was, he said she was a friend. Can you describe this woman? Vara asked again. Sabine was frowning, getting impatient. Well, I don't know. She had dark hair, she was small, very petite, very pretty too. I couldn't make out any facial features since she was so far away, but I know one thing, Gabriel didn't want me to go near her. And he didn't bring her with him when he came the first time, so you might be right about him hiding her. Vara sighed. When you called yesterday, you said he was asking about Susie's medical records. Yes, he was. Poor pup is experiencing growth spurts. He seems to be very worried about it. Vara shared a look with Sabine, and Sabine nodded. Well, at least they knew why he went to see her in the first place. Good, thank you for your help. I'll wire you the money tomorrow morning. Okay, I'm happy to help, Vara. Very happy to help. Mrs. Garcia beamed as she ended the call. She had never made so much money before in her entire life. 2 whole alphas giving her money like it was Christmas. One paying her to keep her mouth shut and the other paying her to talk. At least she could pay some of her bills now and not depend on her useless family. Susie had at least done something good with her life, and for her, too. It was just as if they had never left. Everything was exactly the same. Gabriel went back to work immediately they got out of the plane, leaving Tony to take her and the baby home. Back home, Grace wasn't back yet, but Elliot was in, and he was sitting in the living room when she came downstairs to make a bottle. He was wearing the usual beach shorts he seemed to have a lot of, and he was also wearing a gray sweatshirt. Hey, he called out cheerfully as he waved at her. Hey, Lori said shyly. She wasn't totally comfortable around him yet. She was still a bit weary of him, especially with what Gabriel said about him. She couldn't avoid him, though. They lived under the same roof, technically not in the same house. I heard you went on a trip, Canada, Lori nodded. Have you been? He shook his head. No, I haven't, but I hear it's cold this time of the year. It is. So what were you guys doing there? He persisted, and Lori raised her eyebrow. Why are you so curious? She asked, and he shrugged. I just want to know what was so urgent that has Gabriel flying you and the baby out of the country. You should ask him when you see him then. Elliot chuckled as he ran a hand through his hair and relaxed in his seat. Yay, if you've not noticed by now, Gabriel doesn't like me. Never did, never will. What did you do to him? Why are you assuming it's something I did? Elliot retorted, and Lori shrugged. I don't know. Gabriel doesn't seem like the kind of person to hate someone for no reason. Elliot rolled his eyes. Ugh, he scoffed. I see he's got to you too. Got to me? Lori asked, and Elliot shrugged. I mean, he has fooled you too. He's not a saint, Lori. I never said he was. Anyways, if you don't like him either, why are you living in his house? Lori fired back, her hand on her waist while she gave him a pointed look. Who says I don't like him? Elliot asked, and Lori shrugged as she folded her arms. It sounds very much like you don't like him, she said, and Elliot shrugged. Oh, I like him. He's all right. But that doesn't mean I have to worship him or anything. Lori furrowed her eyebrows. I don't think anyone is asking you to, she said, and Elliot sighed. Anyways, do you know where he is? I need to talk to him. He left for work. Why don't you call him? Call him? He would ignore my calls. Lori sighed. Then you'll wait for him to get back, she said as she started walking to the kitchen. Elliot followed her. There was no avoiding him truly. He could be annoying and persistent when he wanted to be. Lori, you're quite an interesting character. You know, I tried to look you up on social media. I didn't find anything. Lori chuckled. Keeping a social media account wasn't the wisest when running from enemies. She didn't have any social media accounts because of Jared and Asher. Also, the ones she had created in the past had no way of being traced back to her. I'm not too keen on social media. And why is that? Are you hiding something? Elliot persisted, and Lori laughed. Oh, you're insufferable, she said, and he smiled. A nice, gorgeous smile that would have any other girl swooning, but not her, because there was already someone else who could make her swoon. I aim to please. What about you? What do you do in the pool house all day? She asked, and he shrugged. Not much. I play games. Gabriel doesn't let me bring friends over, so once in a while I go back to the city to hang out with my fiends and come back here to unwind and relax. Lori nodded. That sounds refreshing. Shouldn't you be working or in school or something? She asked, and he nodded. Oh, I am. My classes are online, you see. Ooh, Lori said as she went back to what she was doing, aware that his eyes were still on her. What about you? You're around my age. What college did you go to? Lori's cheeks flushed. I haven't gone to college yet, she said, and he shrugged. She looked at him, and he didn't seem to have that judgmental look that she was expecting to see on his face. He actually didn't seem bothered or flustered about it. Oh, that's cool. Do you plan to? He asked, and Lori paused to think. To be quite honest, she had not really thought about going back to college. She could now, she had the funds, it would be easy for her to do, but she wondered why it never really crossed her mind. I think I could. After this job, maybe. Elliot nodded. Or you can do it all online like me. That's not a bad idea, she mused. After preparing the baby's bottle, she went upstairs, with Elliot following suit and chatting with her about mundane stuff. She actually didn't mind his company. He talked a lot, so all she had to do was listen to him ramble on about his friends and school. It didn't seem like a particularly hard thing to do. Besides, he was good with Amelia too, despite claiming he had no prior knowledge of babies. He was very good to her and made her laugh. After they both put the baby to sleep, they went back downstairs and Lori grabbed a tub of ice cream. It was peanut butter. Grace had started stocking up the fridge with ice cream for Lori when she heard that it helped with breast milk production. Lori didn't know if it was true or a lie. Her milk supply had stayed the same, but she did love having ice cream around, so she wasn't complaining. She could finally unwind, at least for a bit. So, where were you born again? He asked, since she shrugged. Cali? Elliot's eyes widened. There is no way you're a Cali girl, he said, and Lori laughed. I left a while ago. That's probably it. Only child? He asked, and she shrugged. I wasn't. 2 brothers, adopted, just like me. Oh, that's good. Do you keep in touch with them? Lori shook her head. What about you? How exactly are you related to Gabriel? We're cousins. My dad is his dad's younger brother. Oh, that's good. How's your dad? Elliot shrugged. My dad died years ago. It's just me and my mom. Only child? She asked, and he hesitated a bit before nodding. Yes, my mom travels a lot, so we don't really get along. I guess you can say Gabriel is like the only person I get along with in my family. Elliot chuckled, and Lori shook her head. It must be really lonely if Gabriel is the only one you get along with. Elliot shrugged. I don't really care. My family's quite messy, to be honest. Messy? How? Lori asked. It wasn't every day she heard something about Gabriel's family. There was very little she knew about them in the first place, and she couldn't help but be curious about them. Elliot waved his hand. Let's not talk about that. It's depressing enough, he answered. Elliot left shortly after. He had to take a call. Lori stayed and enjoyed her ice cream. Grandfather? Elliot said as he picked the call. His grandfather had been calling non-stop after finding out about Gabriel's illegitimate daughter. Elliot didn't know how the old man found out. He was almost 100 years old, and he was so nosy. He also was supposedly living off the grid. How was he even getting information? Not to mention the fact that he was at least 1,000 miles away, yet he still managed to peer into their lives. Oh, Gabriel was going to be pissed. They had a cordial relationship, but there was only so much of Grandpa's meddling he could take. I just landed. Elliot froze. Landed where? The United States. His grandfather said in a clipped, annoyed tone. You didn't tell anyone you were coming. Gabriel isn't going to like this. Like what? Did he think I won't find about his daughter? The man barked into the phone and Elliot sighed. Where are you now? I'm in D.C. I'm going to see your mother first, then I'll be coming home. His grandfather was back home and calling him incessantly. Gabriel could only assume that meant trouble. The man was like 90 years old, he was also retired, and he had promised to stay out of his business. Seemed like that was a lie. Gabriel wasn't about to be bothered about all that. It was one thing he refused to add to his plate. That could wait. Besides, he knew his grandfather would go to D.C. first to see Elliot's mother. They had a weird relationship. They were unnecessary, close, and far too invested in the lives of the people around them. Anyways, he was tired, exhausted. Canada had been a complete waste of time. He just wanted to get back home and have a nice dinner with Lori and kiss his daughter goodnight. He needed sleep, rest, and a little bit of distraction. It also didn't help that he had mounting sexual frustration. Ever since Amelia had been conceived, Gabriel had been more careful with women. He knew what happened with Amelia was an accident, but he decided to be more intentional and deliberate about the women he took to bed. Before Amelia, he could bed any woman he wanted. With just one look, they would swoon. He would take them out for dinner and treat them nice. Sometimes he didn't even have to do that much, and they'd fall in his bed. Many of them were smart enough to understand the arrangement. A guy like him wasn't looking for anything serious. Till he found his Luna and mate, he would have no serious relationship. But now he had found his mate, and it seemed to make things a lot more worse. Especially coupled with the fact that he was now sleeping with Lori on the same bed. It took all his self-control sometimes to restrain himself for not making a foolish move. He had to be careful. Lori was no ordinary woman, and given her history, he understood that it would be natural for her to be weary of men, especially after what that bastard did to her. It would take time, a long time. He arrived home a few minutes later with Elliot meeting him in front of the house. Elliot was frowning at him. "You didn't pick any of my calls," he said, and Gabriel slammed the door of his car. "I was underground. Wolf business," he answered, and Elliot sighed. "I'm guessing you already know then?" Gabriel nodded, stopping in front of the house to talk to Elliot. "Yes, I know. He's in D.C. Elliot shrugged. "Only a matter of time before he and my mother make it here, and pry in my business," Gabriel added. "Why didn't you just tell him?" Elliot asked, and Gabriel narrowed his eyes at him. Anyone that thought telling his grandfather he had an illegitimate child was definitely slow. Well, for the completely obvious reason, you know how traditional he can be. Elliot scoffed. "What will you tell him about Lori, then?" Gabriel glared at Elliot. How did every wolf in his house catch on so quickly? First Grace, then Draco, now even Elliot, who had the attention span of a toddler. About what? Gabriel feigned ignorance as he looked everywhere but Elliot's face. Elliot scoffed. "You actually think I'm stupid?" "Well, I'm not that stupid. You won't hire a human just because she has a great resume." Gabriel sighed. "Then you'd know it's best for you to shut up about that. If grandfather finds out, the elders would be on my neck the next minute." "Well, if you want me to keep quiet about you, then you'd have to start treating me more nicely." Elliot smirked as he folded his arms. This was his opportunity to prove himself to Gabriel that he could be useful to him in a way. "I'd consider that when you stop lazing around all day." Elliot shrugged. "Come on, we both know that's not why you dislike me. We both know." Gabriel sighed. He pinched his nose in frustration. "I don't dislike you, Elliot. I really don't. I just find your nonchalant attitude thoroughly annoying. Will you stop pestering me and let me go in now?" he asked as he pointed to the door, and Elliot moved. "I won't say a word. Don't worry." Well, that was a relief. He would find a way to hide Lori. Knowing his grandfather, the old man would show up in a few days unannounced, and he had to find the least suspicious way to get Lori out of the house. "I actually like Lori. She's growing on me," Elliot claimed, and Gabriel paused. He turned to his cousin and raised a finger to warn him. "Yay, don't get too close to her. I know what you're trying to do, and if you try it, best believe I'm kicking you out of my house." His voice was low, dangerous, and the slight fear in Elliot's eyes told him that his warning was duly received. Elliot shrugged. He wasn't about to get in Gabriel's way. He never planned to. He just liked Lori's company. Lori was in the nursery, slightly dozing off on the couch with the breast pump equipments out. Amelia was sleeping after Lori had given her something for her fever. She knew that the doctor said she had an ear infection, but Lori didn't find it funny that the baby was having at least one case of really high fever in a week. They had been to the doctor twice. Maybe it was time she suggested another pediatrician to Gabriel. It wasn't like she knew any doctors, but they would be better. Certainly more better than Dr. Calloway, who always looked like she was giving Lori the side eye. There was a slight knock on the door before Gabriel came in. He had been doing that ever since he walked in on Lori breastfeeding the baby, trying his possible best to be cautious so he wouldn't run into the same problems again. "Hey," she said as she sat upright, putting away the pump. Gabriel noticed the empty bags and the beast pump and looked away. Lori was looking better than before, less tired, more vigor. She looked beautiful, too. She was wearing a tank top and shorts. Her dressing has always been really relaxed and laid back in the house, but Gabriel suspected she had changed just so she could pump milk. She was wearing no bra under the tank top, and he was desperately trying to keep his eyes from wandering any further down. She didn't even realize the effect that she was having on him. Gabriel nodded, smiling at her slightly. "I am. How are you?" Lori nodded, her heart racing as she glanced at him. "I'm fine. Good day. Amelia had another fever through," she said, and Gabriel sighed as he looked into the crib where his daughter was sleeping. "Did you give her the medicine?" Lori nodded. "I did. It went down after that, but I was thinking we should probably take her to the doctor, especially since this seems to be a recurrent issue." Gabriel sighed. "We can take her for a checkup today or tomorrow. I'll talk to Dr. Calloway." Lori sighed. "Can we get another doctor opinion? I don't know if Dr. Calloway is doing her job correctly," Lori stated. There was a short silence before Gabriel nodded. "No problem. I'll arrange that," he answered. "How was she?" "She was fine, just a bit fussy." "Sorry about that. Did you get enough rest?" Lori nodded. "I did. Elliot came to keep me company. Did you see him? He seemed like he had something important to tell you." Gabriel sighed as sat next to her on the couch. "Oh, he did. He told me." "Are you okay?" Lori asked as she noticed how he was slouching and how tired he was. "I'm just pretty beat. I didn't get enough rest, that must be it." Lori nodded. "I know. You went to work right after we landed. Yes, that was his first mistake. He had rushed back to work. I had so many things to do." "You should take a break every now and then. I don't think it's good for your health to be so busy. Why don't you go in and change? I can bring dinner up for you if you want." Gabriel started to stand up. That would be too much trouble. He protested, and Lori shook her head. "Don't worry, let me," she answered, and she walked out of the nursery, leaving Gabriel with his thoughts. Downstairs, she assembled a tray for him. Jenny made fettuccine alfredo and a side of roast chicken. Lori assembled the food on the tray and took it upstairs. Gabriel had the door of his room opened already, so she easily walked in and set the tray on his bedside table. He came out of the bathroom a few moments in nothing but sweatpants. Lori averted her gaze. "Pasta? Oh, that's good," Gabriel complimented as he looked at the food. "Did you eat dinner yet?" he asked her, and she nodded. "I did. Do you want me to bring you anything else?" she asked, and he shrugged. "Perhaps some wine. I think that would help me sleep." Lori nodded. She was halfway across the room before remembering she had no idea where the wine cellar was. "Where's the wine cellar?" she asked. Gabriel paused, then shrugged. "There's a bottle of Merlot in the kitchen. Just bring that one." Lori nodded. In a second, she was back again with the wine and a wine glass. "No glass for you?" Lori chuckled. "Very funny, but I'm not drinking," she answered, and Gabriel sighed. "That's no fun. I don't really like drinking alone." "Never mind. We'll share a glass," he said, and Lori's cheeks reddened. He patted his bed. "Come on. Don't leave me to dine alone," he said. One full bottle of Merlot later and a lot of nonsense talk, Gabriel and Lori were laughing their asses off hysterically on the bed. Lori couldn't even remember what was so funny, but it had to do with a deer, or was it a llama? Oh, she really couldn't tell. After their laughter died down, Gabriel turned to Lori. They were lying next to each other, the both of them on their sides, their faces so dangerously close that they shared breaths. Gabriel could hear her heartbeat, so close, almost as if it was thudding in his heart too. Gabriel reached out and tucked in a strand of hair beneath Laurie's ear, his hand lingering a bit. "You have lovely hair," he commented, and she smiled. "Thank you." "And a beautiful face," he continued. His eyes drifted to her lips. The air in the room grew thicker. Laurie could feel her breath hitching as she looked at him. She looked at his lips. They looked soft. She had the insane urge to reach out and touch them. She wondered how they tasted. If they would taste like the fettuccine he had earlier, or the wine, or maybe both. Laurie was aware of Gabriel's blue eyes on her face, and she was aware of him leaning towards her. The gap between them slowly disappearing. Her toes curled in anticipation, and she closed her eyes to savor the moment. Gabriel's lips met hers. Slowly, her lips were soft, almost silken, and pillowy against his own. He could feel the soft tickle of her breath beneath his nose, fingers running through her hair as they breathed each other in. Warmth blossomed in Laurie's chest, sparks igniting as Gabriel leaned in closer, his lips kissing hers softly, gently, almost as if he was afraid to break her. The smell of his cologne, his minty breath, it was dizzying. Butterflies were dancing in her stomach. But warmth consumed her as she leaned into the kiss, Gabriel's lips soft against her own. His tongue teased her gently, and Laurie opened up more to him, tentatively letting him play with her tongue. Gabriel's hand traveled down to her neck, caressing her slightly while his hand traveled to the front of her tank top. He cupped one of her breasts in his hand, and Laurie jerked. She broke away from him and sat upright, her cheeks burning in embarrassment. She looked away, her hair hiding her face like a dark curtain. "I'm sorry." She apologized, and she started slipping out of the bed. Gabriel sat upright, gathering the sheets to hide his bulging erection. No, it's my fault. I was moving too fast," he said, and she shook her head. "No, I shouldn't have. I have to go," she said as she started rushing towards the door. Laurie! Gabriel called after her, and she hesitated and paused when she reached the door frame. "I'll be sleeping in my room tonight," she said as she quietly slammed the door after her. Gabriel groaned as he fisted the sheets. Fuck. He had moved too fast. He has spooked her. She was probably never going to let him touch her again. He should have taken his time with her, be more gentle, but he let his emotions get the best of him. Back in her bedroom, Laurie wondered why she had freaked out in the first place. She enjoyed it. She was enjoying her time with Gabriel, but maybe she wasn't fully ready to go that far with him. She hoped he wasn't upset that she had left abruptly, but it was the only way she could sort out her thoughts. Her mind was in a mess. Her head kept replaying the scene, and her belly was still ridden with butterflies. She had never felt that way about someone before, not even a boy. Living a sheltered life with horrible adoptive parents would do that to someone. She rarely had time to look at the boys in her school. She was quiet. She was the outcast, the shy kid who no one seemed to bat an eyelid at. Not to mention, she was so scrawny. Mrs. Wyatt didn't really care for them much in terms of buying new things for them. They wore what they had until it became unwearable. That was their life. And when Asher had come by, things had gotten worse, especially with the way she saw men after that. Laurie became weary of men. All men? She had sworn off men once, completely, thinking she would never be able to get into a normal relationship where she would be loved and where she could love. Everything was changing. All that was changing. The moment she had seen Gabriel, something was different about him. She couldn't just figure out what it was. And now, was she just a nanny? Or was she becoming so much more? She crawled to her bed and buried herself under the covers. Her bed was cold, lacking the familiar warmth of Gabriel's body. She missed him. She missed that. The next day, Gabriel decided he would stay home. Draco would come to him later in the day to drop reports. He went for a run as early as 5 a.m. in his wolf form. He used to do it a lot more often before, but with Laurie around, he couldn't afford to raise her suspicions. But he did it that morning, and he felt refreshed, more than he had ever been. Then after he went for a deep in the pool, naked. Nudity was not a strange concept to werewolves. They cared about it, but at the same time they didn't. Switching into one's wolf form would require one being naked or ruining your clothes in the process. That was how it was, and many of his pack members had grown too used to seeing naked bodies for them to actually care about it. He wasn't even worried about Lori while he took a deep in the pool. If she was watching, he wanted her to watch. Elliot came out of the pool house a few moments later. He rubbed at his sleepy eyes. He must have woken him up. "You're up quite early, Alpha," he said as he looked at his imaginary watch while Gabriel got out of the pool. Gabriel didn't even as much as spare him a glance. "Did Grandfather call you?" he asked, and Elliot shrugged. "No, not since yesterday." "Well, that was good. It could be a good sign or a bad sign, he couldn't really tell. But I'm assuming he'd spend at least 3 days in D.C. before he decides to come here, so you're safe." Gabriel nodded. That was good. He tied a towel around his waist while he patted his face with the other. "I need a favor from you." "What is it?" "I need you to hide Lori when he gets here. You can take her out of the house or out for the whole day, just as long as you get her as far away from him." Elliot nodded. "Sure, I can do that. Good. But why are you hiding her, though? Wouldn't he find out about her later?" Elliot asked, and Gabriel sighed. That was true, but there was a lot he had not told Lori, and there was a lot about their relationship that was still not defined. He couldn't afford to rush into things. He had to be calculated. He had to be smart. The number of people around him who would seek his downfall when they find out that he had a human mate would be astronomical. They would try to use Lori against him to hurt him. He didn't want that for her. Better he finds out later. Not now. Gabriel and Lori ran into each other in the kitchen. Lori was clearing up some bottles, and Gabriel had come to take breakfast. He didn't leave for work yet, so Lori assumed that he was either staying in or going out later. "Did you sleep well?" he asked as he saw her, and she nodded. "No nightmares?" "None." That was because she could barely sleep. She was awake, tossing and turning, thinking of him. Gabriel nodded. "That's good. I'll go up to see Amelia," he said as he walked out of the kitchen. Lori felt bad. He left so fast, she wondered if he was angry about what happened. Elliot walked into the kitchen minutes later. Jenny frowned at him as soon as she saw him. "Don't tell me. You're here for another serving?" she asked, and he grinned at her. The first one was actually quite small, to be honest. He turned to Lori, noticing how rosy her cheeks looked and how beautiful her hair framed her face. "You look extra pretty this morning. Are you going out?" he asked, and she shrugged. "Just to buy some stuff. Grace isn't around, so I have to go." Elliot nodded. "That's great. I can come with you if you want," he offered, and she shook her head. As appealing as it might sound, she really did think she needed time alone to gather her thoughts. "I want to go alone. I like the quiet," she said, and Elliot touched his chest as he feigned disappointment. "I can be quiet," he said, and Lori shrugged. "I know, but I'd like to tag along." "I'd appreciate it if you didn't." Elliot sighed and then shrugged. "Okay, whatever you say, but I'll be waiting when you get back." She went upstairs to change, passing the nursery where Gabriel was in with the baby. She decided it was probably best to give him some privacy, since it seemed like he didn't want to talk to her. Tony brought the car around, ready to drive her to the store, while Lori quickly made a list of everything she was getting. Not much, just more diapers as usual, baby powder, socks, baby wipes, and maybe some new onesies. Yay, she couldn't wait. She changed into casual jeans, a white blouse with black stripes, and put a blue woolly cardigan over it. She wore her old-worn Converse and brushed and put her hair in a bun. She didn't stop at the nursery while she left, waking straight out of the house where Tony was waiting for her inside the car. Lori kind of loved Target. It was her second time at the store, and she found out that she found it really comforting just wandering in the middle of the aisles looking at a ton of stuff. She did that for a while. The last time she had been there, she had been in a rush because of the baby, and then she had saw Mrs. Fuller. She loved being a nanny, especially to Amelia, but she did feel like she wasn't getting around much, at least not like she used to do before. And even if she went out, she always seemed to be going out with the baby. She didn't hate it. She picked the job. It was her choice, but she did enjoy the brief moments where she could be alone and be doing something as simple and mundane as shopping. She stopped by the feminine care aisle and picked a couple of essentials. She needed tampons, and she picked up a bottle of shampoo and conditioner. She was looking at a few body mists when she felt someone tap her. She turned and found Mrs. Fuller standing behind her. "Mrs. Fuller?" Lori said as she looked at her. Mrs. Fuller smiled at her. "I saw you. I actually saw you a while ago, but I didn't know if I should come up to you," the woman said. She looked tired. Lori could remember the last time she saw her, but now it looked like the woman had aged even more. "Oh," Mrs. Fuller looked into her shopping cart and saw the diapers. She smiled. "You're still a nanny?" she asked, and Lori nodded. "Yes, I am." "I figured. I stopped by your apartment yesterday. You weren't home." Lori nodded, a bit confused that Mrs. Fuller had even attempted to see her. "Yeah, I don't actually live there anymore. You know, because I nanny, I can't stay there because it's too far." Her voice trailed off when she saw that Mrs. Fuller was too deep in thoughts to be even listening to her. "My husband and I, we've not been the same ever since it happened." Lori froze. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and Mrs. Fuller shrugged. "It's not your fault. It was never your fault. We were having problems before everything even happened. I guess we just thought that a baby could fix that." The woman sighed again. "Anyways, I stopped by your apartment because I wanted to see you." Lori nodded. "Is there a problem?" "No, none at all. I just thought it's finally time for you to see where Jack was buried." "We named him Jack," Mrs. Fuller said after a long silence. "Jack Joseph Fuller." Lori nodded, forcing a smile on her face. "Jack, that was a nice name. A lovely name, even." "I'm sorry we hid him from you, Lori, but you must understand. We were so angry." "Angry?" If they were angry, then she must have been out of her mind, because as far as memory served her, she was the one who was rushed to the hospital. She was the one who gave birth to him. "We blamed you for everything. For his death. Jack was our miracle baby. He was supposed to be the one who changed things for us. You'll have no idea how broken I felt when he died." "Broken?" Lori scoffed. "What about her? It wasn't exactly a walk in the park for her either. It was like all hope had been snatched away from me." Lori shook her head. "No, they didn't have any right to make her feel that way, to make her feel like she didn't care about him too. He was my son. My son." She repeated as she pointed to herself. "I put him up for adoption because I loved him, because I wanted to give him a better life. Not because I didn't want him." Mrs. Fuller nodded. "I know. I understand that now. I'm sorry I ever made you feel like it was your fault. I'm sorry I kept you away from his grave so long." "I'm sorry, really." Lori sniffed, blinking away tears as she tried to compose herself. Where is he buried?" There was a slight pause before Mrs. Fuller replied. "At St. Joseph Memorial. I can take you there." Lori shook her head. "I want to go alone. It would be quite hard navigating the—" "I want to go alone." Mrs. Fuller nodded. "Okay, I'll write down his plot number for you." After a while, Lori left the store, but it didn't mean she was going home. She dropped off the things she bought in the car and asked Tony to head home without her. He refused, protesting lightly, but Lori assured him that she would be back home before dinner. She took the first cab she saw after that to St. Joseph's Memorial. Gabriel looked at the time. It was getting quite late. Tony and Lori should be back. In the time she had left, Draco had come over with reports. Apparently his grandfather had found out that he had a granddaughter a while ago, at least for the past 2 months. A nurse under Dr. Calloway had given him the information, but he chose to stay quiet, even after the baby was born. Gabriel didn't know if it was because he truly didn't want to meddle or he was waiting for Gabriel to inform him himself. Either way, he had confirmed the story and got angry about it, which was to be expected. Gabriel only hoped he'd keep his mouth shut in that regard. He loved his grandfather, but the man wasn't only nosy, he also talked quite a lot. Times were different. The werewolf world was cutthroat. It was a dog-eat-dog existence. Only the strongest could survive. Alliances, strength, numbers, that was what mattered. Any sign of weakness would be sought after, especially since Gabriel had fought so hard to be alpha. He had fought hard, pissed many people off, some of which were family. It was why he was never fully comfortable with Elliot around. Because he still felt weary, still felt traumatized by how his cousins and distant relatives had attacked him, vying for the position just because they believed they were older and more experienced. Elliot was the only one who never tried. Elliot acknowledged him as Alpha. In fact, he was one of the first of his family to do so, asides his grandfather. His brother, on the other hand, oh no, Lyle had fought with everything in him. And when Lyle and Gabriel had that final fight that left Lyle bleeding out in the woods and Gabriel leaving victorious, no one dared to voice an opposition, not even Elliot, who ordinarily should want to avenge his elder brother's death. He went downstairs and found Jenny talking to Tony. She looked worried as she rubbed her fingers on her apron nervously. She turned when she saw him approaching and bowed slightly. They only did that when Lori wasn't around, Ms. Tony was just telling me that Lori didn't come with him. She told him she had somewhere to go, and she'd be back before dinner. What? She didn't tell me that, Gabriel said as he fished out his phone from his pocket, dialing her number. Did she tell you where she was going? He asked, and Tony shook his head. I don't know. I tried to ask her, but it seemed like she was in a rush. I assumed you already gave her permission. Gabriel shook his head. No, I didn't give her any permission. Gabriel pressed his phone to his ear. No response. She wasn't picking her calls either. He sighed as he turned to Jenny and Tony, who were waiting for him to say something. You said she mentioned she'll be back before dinner, right? He asked, and Tony nodded. We'll wait till then. He pocketed his phone. Lori wouldn't run away or do something stupid. He knew her. She was too smart for that. So he was going to give her the benefit of doubt before tracking her phone. When he gave her a new phone, it already had a spyware that let him know where her location was at all times. As long as her phone was on, Gabriel could track her. But not now. She said she'd be back before dinner, so he would wait. He went back upstairs and disappeared into his study. Anything? Sabine asked, and Vara shrugged. Nothing. Nothing sensible at all. Gabriel planned this very well. Very smart, too. All the doctors, nurses, and specialists that handled the delivery of his daughter were all werewolves. And they're his werewolves. They wouldn't spill a word. Sabine scoffed. He was craftier than she gave him credit for. He certainly knew how to hide his tracks, and he was hiding it well. Whoever this woman was, she must be important enough for him to be keeping her covered up and giving her so much protection. From the little she and Vara had been able to gather, the woman was probably living in his house. She was still unrecognizable to them, but at least they had ruled out the fact that she was working with him because she had mysteriously appeared when his daughter was born. His daughter, whom they could also not find enough information about. Sabine wondered exactly why he was going to great lengths to protect the two of them. It was weird. It was annoying. Vara left the room to take a call. Sabine sat on her chair, fuming. Ever since she made Gabriel give her his word, she had been wondering what she was going to ask for. It was her only chance, and she knew he would honor the promise, but she didn't know what she could or would ask for. If she found out enough about him, enough of his secrets and what he was hiding, she would use it against him. Vara walked back into the room. There was a huge smile on her face. I think we have something. What's that? Sabine sprang to her feet. There was a woman in the same hospital ward. She donated her breast milk to Gabriel's daughter. Our contact only found her nurse because she talked to Gabriel Kane about a breast milk donor. Well, does the woman have a name? Vara sighed. We'll have to pay her to talk, but it won't be long before we find out whether or not it's an actual lead. Jack Joseph Fuller. That was what the plain, gray concrete slab on the grass said. She brought flowers, daisies, the ones she could pick while she was on her way to the cemetery. She placed them on the grave. She stood quietly for a while, for a long time, because she didn't know what to say or what to do. The grief she was feeling, it was heavy on her chest, but she didn't know how to pour it out, or what to do with it. She stood there for a long time, no words, no tears, no emotion, just standing there and watching. After a long time, Lori placed a hand on the cold concrete slab, then she stood up and walked away. As she walked out of the cemetery, she decided she wasn't quite ready to go home yet. She somehow missed her old apartment. The smallness of it, the coziness, besides some of her stuff was still there, and she still paid the last month rent. She didn't know why she did that. She didn't have a key on her, but she always left a spare in a good hiding spot. She took a cab and went to her apartment, plucking the key from the crooked floor crack that she covered with a fake plant. Her neighbor wasn't around, or so she thought. If he was around, he would have heard her coming in, or probably he didn't care. Everything was just as she left it, only with some accumulated dust. She went to her bedroom and curled up on the mattress. She sort of missed it. She missed her apartment, even though, quite frankly, it didn't have much to offer her. It served her well. She looked at her closet and deliberated packing some more clothes she would need. She looked at the time. It wasn't that late yet, and her phone wasn't beeping like crazy, which meant either Gabriel didn't care that she wasn't back home yet, or somehow Tony had not gotten home yet. After a while, she went to her closet and picked out some clothes she decided she might need. They weren't many, but they were the ones she wished she didn't leave. Just a few of them. Some more outing-appropriate clothes. After packing them, she decided to do a little cleanup. Everything was dusty, so she grabbed a napkin and started wiping down on all the surfaces. Then she dusted the furniture and mopped the hardwood floor. By the time she was done, the time had gone. She had spent way more time than she wanted to, and she was already mildly pissed off at herself for staying so long. She dumped her cleaning supplies in the bathroom and went back to her room to pick up her stuff, and found out that she had at least 10 missed calls from Gabriel. Her heart jumped. That was around 5 minutes ago. She was still contemplating on whether or not she would call him back when there was a loud knock on her door. Did Gabriel come for her? She asked herself as she rushed to the door and opened it. No, it wasn't Gabriel, it was Asher. And Jared, boy, am I glad I didn't leave. Asher said as he smirked. He turned to Jared, who looked a little more serious. Jared was standing against the door frame, his eyes down, his lip busted. Lori took several steps back. How? How did they know she was here? Why did they come at this exact very moment that she was in the apartment? Those were the questions that were running through her mind. She couldn't stop thinking about them. And how utterly stupid she had been to believe that she was finally rid of the duo. She would never get rid of them. They were the kind of past that kept haunting, never stopping, never letting her enjoy her life. What are you doing here? She asked as she hugged herself, putting distance between the two of them, clutching the bag of clothes she held to her chest. What am I doing here? Oh, well, let's see, I came to say hi, Asher said as he laughed. He walked into her apartment, his eyes roaming around. Sweet place you got here. Doesn't seem like you stay around much, he mused. Jared followed suit. He didn't say a word to her. He just glared at her and followed Asher. Asher turned to her and snatched the bag from her hands. Lori jerked away in fear. Clothes, are you going somewhere? He asked, and Lori shrugged. Where have you been these days? He persisted. Lori stayed mute. Asher sighed. His patience was running thin. She was testing his very last nerve. I asked you a question, Lori. Now I wouldn't want this to escalate more than it already has. So when I ask you a question, you answer me. Understood, he barked, and Lori nodded. Asher sighed in relief. He sat down on the nearest sofa, rummaging through her bag. So where have you been? Work. Lori was only able to muster a word. And where exactly is work? He asked as he signaled to Jared to check the house. It's far, in the city. She lied, and Asher turned to her. For some reason, he always knew when she was lying. Whether or not he thought she was lying this time, he didn't show it, he let it slide. And what exactly does work mean? Are you waiting tables, or what? Now she had run out of lies. She didn't know what to say, but she'd probably go with what he was saying. It was better he didn't know about Amelia or Gabriel. Yeah, Asher scoffed. He dropped the bag and turned to her, giving her his full undivided attention. Are you lying to me? Because I can tell you are. Look what I found. Jared called out as he came out of Lori's bedroom with her phone in his hand, the one Gabriel had bought for her. Asher's eyes widened. Wow, how many tips did you have to get to buy a phone like this? Jared handed him the phone and Asher examined it, a cruel smirk on his face. It was a gift. Lori answered, and he raised his eyebrow. From who? That man I saw you with the other? Who is he, by the way? He looked rich. Asher noted, and Lori kept mute. She was in so much trouble. So much trouble. Aren't you going to say anything? He asked as he narrowed his eyes at her. He stood up from the sofa and started walking towards her. Lori felt her hands starting to tremble with every step he took towards her. "He works where I work, that's all." "Oh, stop lying. You really think I believe that?" He shouted at her. He grabbed Lori by the throat, tightening his grip on her. Jared looked nervous. "Asher," he warned, but Asher ignored him. "Please, please." Lori begged as she started choking, and he released his hold on her, but his hand remained on her neck. He raised the phone to her face. "Unlock it." If she unlocked her phone, he would see Gabriel's name. He would see the pictures she had taken of Amelia. And God knows what he would assume. It was too big of a risk for her to take. Too big for her to risk Amelia and Gabriel's life in danger. She wouldn't. "Asher, please, just let me go. I've done nothing wrong." "Lori? I don't care. Unlock this phone," he shouted in her face. Lori shook her head. "Please, please, Asher, just let me go. There's nothing on it. There's nothing for you to see," she shouted back at him. Asher groaned, raising his hand as if he was going to hit her, and Lori closed her eyes and braced herself for the impact. It never came, but something else did. A knock on the door. "Lori? Lori? Are you in there?" Lori sobbed in relief. "Gabriel!" It was Gabriel. She had never been so relieved to hear his voice. Asher and Jared exchanged looks. "Who's that?" Asher whispered to her, but Lori shrugged. Asher elbowed her in her ribs. She doubled over in pain. "I asked you a question," he whispered again. "Lori, are you in there?" If she didn't reply, Gabriel was going to assume she wasn't and leave her there. Leave her with the two of them. And the mere thought of that was too much to bear. "Gabriel, help!" She screamed before Asher covered her mouth. "Fucking bitch!" Asher screamed as he delivered a steaming backhanded slap across her face. He heard her. She was sure he heard her. Because the next minute he was trying the door, the minute he realized it was locked, he slammed into the door. The door shattered, as if it was made of nothing but paper. The wood splintered and Gabriel came bursting through, anger on his face. He looked around. Lori was on the floor, holding a hand to her cheek. There were two men, one he recognized and the other he did not. "Who the fuck are you?" The one he didn't recognize asked as he ran towards Lori and grabbed her. Lori protested, but he only held her tighter, a hand to her neck and the other holding her hands behind her waist. Oh, he should have known. He should have known that something was wrong. When it was late and Lori didn't come home, during that moment he got really worried and he checked the spyware. It was too late. She had spent way longer than she had said she would spend outside, and he had a feeling something bad had happened. Her phone location showed that she was in her apartment, and that baffled him. He decided to check it out anyways, calling her multiple times while he was on the way. She didn't pick her calls. Now he wished he had come sooner. "Unhand her now," Gabriel said in a calm, cool voice, and Asher chuckled. "Or what?" he asked as he slightly raised his shirt up. He was carrying a Glock 9mm. He had a cruel smirk on his face. He probably thought that Gabriel would be intimidated, but no, Gabriel had never been scared of guns. Why would he? He was an alpha. He could heal from a gun wound in a day or two if it wasn't so severe, and if it wasn't a silver bullet, it was practically useless. It would be just like he was taking an off day. Still, Gabriel pretended to look intimidated while he examined his options. "Let her go. If you do, I'll give you whatever you want," he pleaded as he raised his hands. Asher seemed to be considering his options. On one hand, he was very curious. He wanted to know what the relationship between this man and Lori was. Were they dating? Was she seeing someone new? Is that why she was so tight-lipped about him? He was a rich man. Even from his casual dressing, Asher could smell someone who was born in money from a mile away. The way he carried himself, the way he talked, and the way he seemed to look down on people. Yes, he was rich, all right, which meant he probably had never experienced hardship for a day in his life. He would be easy to beat. But the way he had burst into the room, Asher looked at the door again. That couldn't be normal. Either the door was really brittle or the man was freakishly strong. "Who are you to her?" he asked as he casually brought out the gun, pointing it slightly at Gabriel. Oh, he was going to regret that, Gabriel thought as he clenched his teeth. "A friend." Asher laughed. "A friend," he scoffed as he turned to Lori. "You say he works with you, and he says you're friends. Which do I believe? Tell me, Lori." he asked, and Lori sighed. She was exhausted, and Jared was practically squeezing the life out of her with his death grip. She blamed herself for coming to the apartment in the first place, and putting not only herself in danger, but Gabriel. Asher was carrying a gun. How could she forget? He almost always had one with him, and now she could get hurt. Even worse, Gabriel could get worse. He would be in the situation if not for her. "Please just let him go. It's me you want, right?" she asked. Asher shrugged. "I don't know. Depends on if there's something you could offer me in the first place." "But there's really nothing, is there, Lori? You lost our baby." Lori fought the urge to gag. "Our baby? Our baby?" she said as she chuckled. Jared elbowed her again, whispering in her ear that she should be quiet. She ignored him, wincing through the pain. "I don't know what you want. I don't know why you're here. But I'm tired. If you want to hurt me, do whatever you want with me, but please let him go," she said, and Gabriel glared at her. "Lori," he said in a warning tone, but she didn't listen. "It's not him you want, and he doesn't even know who the two of you are, so there's no point," she said, and Asher chuckled. "You seem really eager to protect this man," he mused while glaring at Lori. That was his chance, Gabriel thought as he saw how distracted Asher was. He could disarm him in seconds. Gabriel lunged at him, pushing Asher on the floor. Asher lost his balance and fell, but quickly tried to reposition himself and fire a shot, but he missed. He fired at the wall next to the door instead, and Gabriel slapped the gun away from his arm. With the gun away from them, he lifted Asher up with the collar of his shirt and punched his face. Twice. He gave him another punch in the stomach. "Hey! Hey! What are you doing?" Jared asked nervously as his eyes darted around nervously. The gun was at the opposite end of the room. If he had to pick it up, Gabriel would notice, besides, dragging Lori around would be cumbersome. He threw Lori to the side and went for the gun anyways. Big mistake. Gabriel had anticipated the move. He rushed towards the gun and picked it up, pointing it at the both of them. Asher was on the floor struggling to stand up, blood dripping from his mouth. Jared stood next to him, his hands raised in surrender. "Don't fucking move," he warned in a low, deadly tone that Lori had never heard him use before. He turned to Lori, beckoning her with a wave of his hand. "Come here," he said, and she ran towards him. Gabriel hugged her with his free hand and put her behind him. "You're safe now," he whispered gently to her. Lori held on to him with all her might. "My phone is in my back pocket. Call the cops." Gabriel whispered to Lori, and she looked at him in bewilderment. "What?" she whispered back. Gabriel sighed, his eyes focused on the two men in front of him. "Lori, call the cops," he said again, almost raising his voice. Lori shook her head. She was smart enough to know that was pointless, and it'll only piss of Asher more and give him more information about them. "No, let's just leave. Leave!" Gabriel exclaimed. "How the hell can I just leave them after everything they just did?" "Gabriel, please trust me on this. It's pointless. Let's just go." She had seen firsthand how Asher and the police worked hand in hand together. She wouldn't be surprised if he had friends in the police force, even in Colorado. Besides, even with that, they couldn't actually charge him for breaking and entering. She opened the door for him. Even if they decided to charge him for assault because he hit her, Lori was 100% sure he would weasel his way out of prison on bail, making him more angry and more set on destroying her. Calling the cops won't do shit. "I think you'd better listen to her. She's right, you know," Asher said as he wiped the blood from his lips. Gabriel glowered at him. "Shut up," he warned as he contemplated on Lori's words. He wanted to argue with her. He really did. In fact, he was angry with her, but he decided to trust her on this one time, because he knew there was no way in hell he'd let the two idiots get a hold of her ever again. He would find them and hunt them for what they did. He stepped away from the door. "Well, get out," he said as he pointed to the exit. Slowly, the two of them walked out, with Gabriel's eyes on them till they reached the end of the hall and disappeared from sight. By this time, a couple of neighbors were already outside their apartments. They just heard the gunshots. Lori looked around nervously and sighed. "Let's go," she said, and Gabriel shook his head. "Not after explaining to me what the hell just happened." Lori sighed. "I'll explain on our way back. she said as she walked towards her phone that was on the floor. "I'll talk to the landlord about the door. Maybe they can get maintenance to fix it." "God, Lori, I don't care about a stupid door," Gabriel exclaimed. "I just want to know what happened. Why were they here? And why the hell didn't you tell me anything?" She nodded. "I'll tell you everything." They left the apartment shortly after she called her landlord. She promised to pay for the door to get fixed, told him there was a slight disturbance. The cops came in a few moments later. Someone must have called 911. Lori talked to them, and while they wanted to go take her to the station for a statement, Gabriel was somehow able to convince them with his influence that she didn't need to. It was an intruder, they had both said. It all happened so fast, and the person had left when Gabriel came over. The cops let her go. Inside the car, Lori told Gabriel everything. He was mostly silent as she talked, about going to the cemetery, then feeling sad and lost and going back to her apartment till Asher and Jared showed up. Gabriel didn't say a word till she was done. He only clenched his jaw whenever she mentioned their names. When she was finally done, he didn't say anything for her, while he just looked at her. There was an angry red scar on her cheek where Asher had slapped her, and she had almost even forgotten she was slapped till she started talking and feeling the sting of the pain. "Lori, I told you before. I told you I would always protect you. You should have called me. A call, a text, anything really to let me know that you're okay and good. I was worried sick. I started to think something bad had happened to you. You could have called me." "I'm sorry," she said, and he shook his head. "That's not okay. It isn't. I promised you I'd keep you safe and always protect you. I told you you could tell me anything. With that bastard in town, why did you feel it was safe to go back to your apartment when you know he must have been looking for you?" Lori sighed. Yes, that was true. She shouldn't have assumed that he had just left town. Knowing Asher and knowing how little he knew about what was going on in her life, he would have been curious. He wouldn't have been able to stay away. "I'm really sorry, Gabriel. You know how I feel about you. I'd never let anyone hurt you, and I promise those guys are going to pay for what they did. But you, Lori, you have to start trusting me more." Lori wanted to protest that she did, but she didn't say a word. "Seeing you like that today, it made me so angry. I didn't even think that I could feel that amount of rage, that amount of anger towards someone. No more secrets, Lori, please." Lori nodded. "No more secrets," she said. He reached out and held her hand in his, kissing her palm softly. Back in the mansion, everyone in the main house was worried and still awake, at least until they saw Lori. "Oh, Lori, you're back!" My Gregory called out the minute Gabriel and Lori entered the foyer. Lori nodded. "I am, thanks." He searched her face and saw the angry red mark on it. "Are you okay?" She nodded. "I am, just a bit sore." She answered honestly. "Sylvia, bring some ice for Lori," he called out as Sylvia ran back into the kitchen. "We'll be upstairs," he told Gregory as he led Lori upstairs. Lori wanted to stop at the nursery, but Gabriel shook his head. "No, not yet," he said as he led her into his room. Moment later, Sylvia arrived with the ice. Gabriel instructed her to bring her dinner up for her. "I'm fine, really." Lori lied as she winced while settling on the bed. Gabriel shook his head. "You're not. Let me see your belly. I remember him hitting you there." Lori raised her top slowly. He was right. There were angry purplish bruises on her ribs. He frowned at them. "We'll need more ice," he said to himself as he touched them gently. "Does it hurt?" He asked her and she nodded. "Yeah, when I move, it hurts a bit." She confessed and he sighed. "Okay, let me get you more ice." Lori sighed as she settled into the covers, Lori's up with an ice pack on her cheek. If she had not been so stupid and gone to her apartment in the first place, this wouldn't be happening. She wouldn't have had to drag Gabriel in her mess. Gabriel and Sylvia came back moments later. Sylvia with a tray of food and Gabriel with more ice packs. "Thank you," she murmured as she looked at the food. Her stomach grumbled. She didn't realize how hungry she was. Gabriel sat close to her, one hand on her legs. "Now, you're going to tell me everything you know about those two men." His voice was low, deadly, like that same deep warning voice he used while they were back in her apartment. She had never heard him sound so scary before. Every single detail. Lori gulped. She didn't need to ask him what it was for. She already knew. He would go after them. Everything you know I can use against them, because when I'm done with them, they're going to wish they never crossed me. Sienna Robertson loved the smell of coffee. She loved the smell of coffee in the mornings and noon. After a particularly long day, she could just imagine drinking a cup of coffee. One could say she was addicted to the stuff. And as a nurse, she went through at least 5 cups of coffee a day. So, when a woman named Sabine Reinhardt had called, requesting her audience, she had asked them to meet her at her favorite coffee shop. She didn't know what they wanted, but it sounded urgent enough and they were willing to pay for her time. On a normal day, she would have refused. But the Reinhardts were a household name in Denver. Her father owned a chain of restaurants in Colorado. Sabine was his daughter. She had accepted out of curiosity. She sat down and mused over the coffee she would order, wondering about whether or not it was rude to order before the guests came. She made her order anyways, 1 espresso macchiato. Shortly after her coffee arrived, she spotted her guests, Sabine Reinhardt accompanied by a woman she didn't know. "Pleased to meet you, Ms. Robertson. I'm so glad you honored my invitation." The woman shook her hand. Sienna smiled warmly at her. "The pleasure is mine, although I have to confess I don't know why you'd want to see me." Sabine slipped into the seat across from her while Vara stood beside her. "This is my assistant, Vara. You spoke to her on the phone." Sienna nodded. "Yes, I remember," Sabine sighed. "Mrs. Robertson, I'd go straight to the point. I'm a very busy woman as you know it, so I can't stay too long for idle chit-chat," Sabine said as she chuckled. Sienna watched her closely, waiting for what she would say. "Have you ever met a Mr. Gabriel Kane in your profession?" "Mr. Gabriel Kane?" Sienna furrowed her eyebrows. She was a nurse. She met lots of patients and their families. "I can't say that I remember." Sabine nodded. "Let me juggle your memory. You found him a breast milk donor." Oh, I remember now," Sienna exclaimed, and Sabine seemed to sigh in relief. "Excellent. I want to ask you about the donor," Sabine said, and Sienna's eyes darted between Sabine and her assistant. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want you to tell me about her, Ms. Robertson." Sienna chuckled. Surely they were joking. "I'm afraid I can't reveal that kind of information." "Oh, please, you're not revealing anything. We just want to know about the donor," Vara said, and Sienna glanced at her. "Why?" she asked suspiciously, and Sabine signaled to Vara. Vara reached for her breast pocket and pulled out a brown envelope. She dropped it on the table. "Let's hope this is enough incentive for you to talk," she said, and Sienna eyed the money. What was going on? "Mrs. Robertson, I promise you we mean no harm. We just need the name of the donor. If you can help us with that and a description of how she looks, we'll be well on our way in the next minute." There was a short pause before Sienna nodded. "I think her name was Loretta Wyatt." "Yeah, Loretta." Sabine nodded. "Loretta Wyatt. Very unfamiliar name." "Okay, can you describe her?" Sienna shrugged. There wasn't much she remembered about the woman, except that she was very beautiful. She had long dark hair, petite frame, hazel eyes. That's all I remember, really. Sabine nodded. "You said she donated milk to Mr. Kane's daughter. Was this a one-time thing, or did they continue with the agreement?" "Oh, it wasn't a one-time thing. From what I heard, she went on to continue donating her milk. In fact, I think it's quite possible she still donates today." Lori woke up in the middle of the night, still a bit sore, but overall she felt better. Gabriel had fussed over her all night. She had told him everything about Asher and Jared, everything he needed to know, and with the look on his face, Lori just knew that they would never bother her again. She went to the nursery. She had not seen Amelia since she left, and when she got back, Gabriel made her lie in bed and eat, then sleep, promising her that the baby was doing fine without her. In the nursery, Amelia was sleeping peacefully. Lori smiled as she realized that Jenny had swaddled her with the wrong blanket. She felt tired, and sore too. Her boobs felt heavy. She had not pumped all day, she thought, as she left the nursery. If she didn't pump before daybreak, they would be sore and hard, and she wasn't about to deal with all of that. In the kitchen, she pulled out the breast pumps and milk storage bags and got to work, rubbing her sleepy eyes in the process as she put on her phone. She switched to Instagram. She had harmlessly created an account a few days ago. With a fake name, though, and she found the app quite addicting. She loved scrolling through the Explore page and finding different things. She was aimlessly scrolling through her photos when she heard someone's footsteps. She looked behind her and saw Gabriel. He must have got up when he noticed she wasn't in bed. "Can't sleep?" he asked, and she shook her head. "Sort of. I just need to pump," she said as she pointed at the storage bags on the counter. Gabriel nodded. "Did I wake you?" she asked quietly, and he shook his head. They were silent again. With only the two of them awake and everybody else sleeping, the only constant noise was the silent hum of the refrigerator. "I'm sorry for what happened." Gabriel shook his head. "It wasn't your fault. You don't have to keep apologizing. I mean, you had no idea they were going to come and see you." He reassured and Lori nodded. He walked to the fridge to get a glass of water. Lori removed the pump, transferring the milk into a bottle first. Gabriel turned to watch. It was fascinating to him, the human body, the way it produced the milk. "What?" Lori asked as she caught him staring. "Nothing. I just wonder how it tastes like," he said, and Lori chuckled. She had tasted it before. It didn't taste like much. It tasted sweet, that was what she remembered. "Do you want to taste it?" she asked him, and he shook his head. "Wouldn't that be weird?" he asked, and she shrugged. "I don't see why it would be weird. It's just milk," she said, and Gabriel shrugged. "Okay, get a cup," she asked him, and he did, hastily in fact. He passed her a cup and she poured him some milk from the bottle. She didn't put much, just enough to be considered a mouthful. "Okay, here it is. Taste it," she said as she passed him the cup. Gabriel stared at it for a while before taking the cup and having a sip. He swished the liquid in his mouth for a while before swallowing. "So? How does it taste?" she asked, and he shrugged. "Very sweet." "I'm not sure I was expecting it to be so sweet." Lori rolled her eyes. "Grace did mention something about him not having a sweet tooth. Does it taste like actual milk to you?" she asked, and he tilted his head in thought. I don't think so. It does have a milky taste, but I think it's also very watery." Lori nodded her head. He was right. That was a close and accurate description of what it tasted like. "Well, you're actually right. I see why babies like it," he added. That was when it hit him. He was foolish. How did he completely miss it? Lori's breast milk. There was a strong possibility that it could be what was giving Amelia her growth spurts. Lori wasn't human. At least that was what Draco thought, and Draco was never really wrong about things like that, so it must mean that whatever Lori was could be causing Amelia to have growth spurts. He didn't know why he didn't think of it before, especially when they had examined every other possibility. Susie's grandmother had mentioned that it wasn't hereditary, and Gabriel himself had found out that it wasn't. He had to test the theory, some way, somehow. "Can you pour me a little bit more of it?" he asked, and Lori raised an eyebrow. "What?" she asked, and he shrugged. "Just a bit," he said, and she poured him a little bit. "Okay, just a little. But you should know this is a one-time thing. My milk supply isn't exactly great," she said, and he nodded, drinking it all in one gulp. The only problem he had now was how he was going to test his new theory. "I'll head to bed. See you later," he said, and Lori nodded. "You too." "Well, the nurse gave us a lead. I did a thorough search online, was able to find her driver's license," Vara said as she dropped her laptop on the table for Sabine to see. Sabine stared at the image before her. The woman in front of her looked young, with dark hair, and her eyes looked darker. She was just 23. Sabine was at least 12 years older than her. That made her a bit uncomfortable. Gabriel didn't normally go for women younger than him, at least from what she knew, but this woman, she was way younger. "So the address, have you checked it out?" Sabine asked, and Vara shrugged. "I'm on my way there now. But my instincts tell me she probably doesn't live there anymore. I'll ask around about her," Vara added as she picked up her laptop. Sabine sighed as she rubbed at her face. That woman is such an enigma. I really can't wait to find out why Gabriel is hiding her." Vara arrived at Lori's apartment complex a few hours later, and she met quite the scene. She had been skeptical at first, seeing as there were two grown men arguing in front of her door and one other man crouched in front of her door frame with a drill in his hand. "Hello, excuse me," She called, and the two men looked at her, obviously annoyed that she had interrupted their conversation. "Hello, my name is Lydia Hopkins. I'm a friend of Loretta. I've been trying her cell." "Is she home?" she asked as she pointed to the door that had Laurie's apartment number on it. She was lying. It was a lie, and the younger man narrowed his eyes at her. "Really?" he asked, and Lydia nodded. "I just want to know if she's okay." The man scoffed. "If you're really her friend, then you'd know she's not home, and she hasn't been home for weeks." Vara feigned surprise. "Really?" she asked, and the man rolled his eyes. He turned to the older man in front of him. "See, this is what Rick and I deal with. Like every week there's always someone looking for her, and she doesn't even stay here anymore. And imagine the shooting that happened just yesterday." "Shooting? Did someone get hurt?" Vara asked eagerly, and the man rolled his eyes. "No, I don't think so. But what happened?" she asked, and the man shrugged. "I don't know. I really don't. Rick was the one who gave me the details. He told me she came in yesterday and someone tried to break in her place or something. At least that's what she told the cops." "Who knows?" "Rick. Well, if Rick seemed to know more, then maybe Rick was the one she needed to meet." "Where's Rick?" she asked. And the man shrugged. "He's out of town. God knows how long he'll be gone." The other man said as he sighed. "Anyways, you said you're looking for Laurie? Well, I don't think she lives here anymore," the other man said. He looked calmer, more relaxed. "Yes, I'm just so worried." Vara sighed. "We haven't been in good terms lately, and I'm worried she's not doing so well," she added, injecting enough sympathy in her voice to make them pity her. The other old man didn't seem to care, but the younger guy sighed and finally gave in. "Have you tried her work? I know she works at Jay's Diner or something, that dump of a place. You should check there," the younger man said. Vara nodded. "Okay, thank you." Jay's Diner. It wasn't much. In fact, it wasn't anything at all because Vara was 100% sure she didn't work there anymore. But it could probably help. It should help. Gabriel woke up a few hours later when it was daybreak, feeling fine. Weird. He had expected to feel different, to feel some kind of way. Maybe it didn't work that way. Was his theory wrong? Laurie was still sleeping when he woke up, and he let her sleep, dashing to the nursery, where Amelia was already awake and being changed on the changing table by Jenny. "Good morning, Alpha," Jenny said as she bowed slightly. Gabriel nodded. "How is she?" Jenny smiled. "She's good. No high temperature today?" He asked out of curiosity, and Jenny shook her head. "No, none. She's perfectly fine." "I didn't even have to give her medicine," Gabriel nodded. He would schedule another checkup with Dr. Calloway just to be safe. "What did you feed her yesterday?" Gabriel asked, and Jenny paused. "Excuse me? Breast milk or formula? Which one did she have?" he asked, and Jenny gulped hard. Well, I gave her more of the formula. You see, Laurie's milk was in the deep freezer, and when I checked it was already so frozen, and I didn't have time to defrost it and warm it up, so I just made some formula for her," she explained, and Gabriel nodded. "Okay, I was just curious," he said as he left the room. He was halfway back to his room when an idea popped in his head, so he turned and headed down the stairs. He had taken her milk, but so far he had no adverse reaction, at least none that he was aware of. Maybe, just maybe, it would affect him in a different way since he was older. As he walked out of the main house and past the pool, he thought about how stupid his idea and far-fetched his idea was, but he was willing to try it. "What? What are you doing here so early?" Elliot asked as he rubbed his eyes. He had been peacefully sleeping in his bed when Gabriel started knocking his door like a madman. He rushed to the door thinking there was some sort of problem. "I need a favor," he asked, and Elliot sighed. "What is it?" "Punch me." "What?" Elliot straightened. Gabriel sighed. It sounded stupid to him too, but it was worth a shot. Amelia's grandmother had mentioned that Amelia would have asthma and breathing problems since it was hereditary, but Amelia didn't have that. What if Laurie's breast milk has some sort of healing properties? "Just punch me!" "Gabriel, are you okay?" Elliot asked, sounding concerned now. "For God's sake, Elliot, stop asking stupid questions and fucking punch me." "Hard," Elliot sighed, then raised his fist. He mustered all the strength in him and connected his fist with Gabriel's face. Gabriel staggered for a second, then stood straight. He felt the force of the punch, He definitely did. It was a strong punch. But he didn't feel any pain. I have a theory, Draco said as he flipped the pages of the old book. It was called the Book of Supernaturals, a small leather-bound book that had information on every recorded supernatural. Gabriel had called Draco the minute he left Elliot, who had been thoroughly confused by his request. Draco had come over quickly, and Gabriel ushered him into his study and locked the door behind them. It was still early, too early for Lori to wake up, so he knew they had a few more minutes to themselves before she woke up. "What is it?" Gabriel asked, and Draco sighed. It was a long shot, but Lori seemed to possess most of the qualities of a long-lost supernatural he himself had never seen or heard of before. He didn't know for sure if it was true, but with everything that Gabriel had told him, it sounded pretty accurate. "They're called the Nephil." "Nephil?" Gabriel asked. Well, okay, he had never heard of such a supernatural before, and he knew a lot of supernaturals, or more commonly known as Nephilim. Nephilim? Gabriel repeated, and Draco nodded. Now that word he had heard before, but had ever actually met one? No, he had not. Offsprings of the forbidden mating between angels and humans. There hasn't been a Nephil sighting in at least 30 years. Why? Draco sighed. They're hunted for their blood. Centuries of mating with humans made their bloodline undetectable, so they can easily pass as humans. The only way to truly activate the power in their blood is if they become a supernatural, like a vampire or a shapeshifter like us. They're hunted for their blood, so there's not many of them. Draco pointed to the book. Look at this. The stuff that their blood can do is endless, and they haven't even done full research on their capabilities. Gabriel peered at the book. The author of the book wrote that their blood had unimaginable healing and regenerative purposes only when used for other supernaturals. They used to be the most hunted creatures on Earth. Their kind was sold as slaves. Their blood was sold for the highest bidder, and some supernaturals used to breed them for their blood. As their numbers dwindled, they grew smarter in hiding themselves amongst humans, breeding so much and so often with them that they went undetectable. That's very sad, Gabriel said, and Draco nodded. It is. You said Lori is an orphan? He asked, and Gabriel nodded. Well, I don't think her parents left her alone by choice. They probably thought she was safer growing up as a normal human child. But we can't know for sure, Draco added, and Gabriel massaged his temple. Lori was a supernatural. Not just any supernatural one that was practically extinct and had been haunted for years. Things could arguably go worse. I think the proof is already there. I know, but you have to understand, a Nephilim in this age and time is like finding a needle in a haystack. Gabriel shrugged. I'm telling you, when Elliot punched me, I didn't feel a single thing. I asked him to try again, and he punched me even harder. Still didn't feel a thing. Elliot had also been shocked that he had not flinched, but Gabriel was practically stunned. He stood at the same spot for seconds, wondering how and why it was remotely possible that some milk could protect him from getting hurt. Draco sighed. I wonder what would happen if you take her blood. Draco mused, and Gabriel shook his head. No, I'm not experimenting with that. Just a sample, Gabriel, just to be sure and know what her blood is really capable of. No, Draco, it's too risky. Would you rather not know? I mean, I already know, Draco scoffed. Do you? For all we know, she could be something else. We take a sample of her blood and test it just to be sure. I don't think that's necessary, Draco, Gabriel said as he closed the book and put it back on the top shelf where it was. He turned around and saw Draco frowning. Well, are you going to tell her? Tell her? Gabriel exclaimed, and Draco nodded. How long will you keep this away from her? How long will you keep everything away from her? Gabriel clenched his jaw but stayed quiet. He couldn't deny that Draco was right. Lori needed to know. Besides, there was so much that he needed to tell her that he had not. She's not a normal girl, and you're not some normal man. It's best she learns about it all now rather than later. I'll tell her when the time is right. Gabriel finally stated, and Draco sighed. There isn't a better time than now. Nothing? Nothing. Vara repeated. She had a long, tiresome day, not to mention the day had not been as productive as she wanted it to be. No, in fact, after she had left Loretta Wyatt's apartment, things had only gone downhill from there. Jay's diner was a dump, and the coworkers had nothing sensible to tell her. Only one coworker remembered her, and he told her that she didn't work there anymore and he wasn't close to her. The other two were new, so they didn't even know anything about her. She had persisted, thinking they were lying, but the clueless look on their face was all she needed to know. I went to the place where she worked, but they have no idea where she could be. Sabine sighed. All right, what do we do now? Vara shrugged. She was already tired. It was a fruitless adventure. Gabriel kept the young woman well protected. They would never be able to find out anything else about her unless he slipped up. I don't know. I think now we have to focus on other things. Other things? Vara, you know how important this is. Vara cut in. I know. But there's another way. Always another way. She repeated as a sly smile bloomed on her face. Things became awkward. Lori didn't know why or how it became awkward, but it had been 3 days and Gabriel spent all of his time at the office. She wondered if it had anything to do with her. She was feeling much more better. Her bruises had healed and she was no longer sore, but her period came barging in like an unwanted visitor 3 days ago, and she got very moody too. Very moody. Gabriel had also been arriving home so late that she was already asleep when he got into bed. She tried the first night to wait up for him, but she had slept off. The next morning, he had left shortly after she woke up, offering her only a brief good morning. Lori couldn't tell where it all went wrong. She had asked Grace, wondering if he had confided in the woman about something, and Grace had chalked it all up to work. Gabriel is a very busy man. He's just busy at work. Don't worry yourself. She patted Lori's shoulder and reassured her. Oh well, that made her relieved, at least for a little bit. If Grace didn't see anything wrong in his recent behavior, then she had nothing to say. Elliot was the only one who seemed to keep her company. Lori didn't know if it was because they were close in age or he was very persistent, but she found him very easy to talk to. And he was also giving her the right motivation she needed to apply for college. It was a big step, but she knew it was something she should consider. She wasn't going to be a nanny forever, and it would be nice for her to actually finish her education. So college didn't seem like a bad idea. It was something she could think about, something she could plan for. Have you played video games before? Elliot asked out of the blues, pulling Lori out of her thoughts. They had been sitting in the living room, watching TV while Lori held Amelia in her arms. She wasn't really watching the show. She had just been mindlessly staring at the television, consumed with her thoughts, until Elliot asked her a question. No, I haven't really played one before. Why? She asked, and he shrugged. I was hoping we could play some. Lori chuckled. You're bored? She asked, and he nodded. This house is too damn boring. And Gabriel won't let me bring any friends. Why don't you go out then? She asked, and Elliot shrugged. Oh, he wished he could actually go out. But ever since that morning where Gabriel asked him to punch him, he had been acting strange. And then he had told him to protect Lori and not leave her side. He asked why, but Gabriel didn't give him a straightforward answer. Elliot wondered if there was some kind of problem that Gabriel was worried about. Either way, he had listened to him and agreed to it, only because he was looking for a way to make Gabriel fully trust him. Ever since his incident with his brother, Gabriel grew weary of Elliot, even though time should have told him that Elliot would never actually oppose him or betray him. How could he? He was young, inexperienced, with nothing but his family name. His own mother didn't even care enough about him. Why would he try to defend a brother whom he barely knew, especially when he was so young? You haven't actually been out in a couple of days. It's very unusual for you. Lori added, and he nodded. Yeah, my friends aren't really in town. We only meet up when we're in town, he said, and Lori nodded. Oh, doesn't mean you can't go out. You look bored as hell. Hey, I'm not bored. I'm with you. That's entertaining, Lori scoffed. I'm not doing anything entertaining. Elliot shrugged. You could be. I could teach you how to play video games. It's a very important skill set that would be useful in the future. Useful for what? She asked as she laughed, and Elliot shrugged. I don't know, but it's fun and you should try it anyways. Lori nodded. If she didn't agree, he would nag her about it. After. That would be after I put Amelia down for her nap, she said, and Elliot nodded. Okay, I'll go set up in the lounge room. Lori's eyes widened, but she remained mute. Jenny walked in. I heard you and Elliot want to play some games. Why don't I take the baby, then you can go ahead? She said enthusiastically, and Lori shook her head. Oh no, I can't. You must have your own work to do. I can't just dump her on you. Besides, I need to feed her soon, she said as she hugged the baby tighter. Jenny shrugged. Oh, don't you worry about that. I'm done with work. In fact, I had nothing to do. That's why I came. Take her off your hands, she said, and Lori contemplated her words. She didn't want to burden Jenny, especially since she had been helping so well with the night feeds. Jenny rolled her eyes. Oh, don't tell me you're actually thinking about it. It's not a big deal. Hand her over. She stretched her hands, and Lori begrudgingly handed her the baby. I left some milk out for her bottle. You should warm it up and make sure you test the temperature before giving her, Lori instructed, and Jenny nodded. Yes, off you go, she said as she practically shooed her away. In the kitchen, Jenny saw the storage pack of milk that Lori had put out. She looked around nervously. For the past 3 days, she had been replacing Lori's breast milk with formula. She didn't know why she was doing it. She just knew it was the instructions of Mr. Gabriel. She had been confused when he had told her. She asked him, Mr. Gabriel, if you don't want Lori to give Amelia her breast milk anymore, I think it's best you just tell her. Gabriel had sighed. I don't know how to tell her, especially in a way that it wouldn't hurt her feelings. So just keep doing this while we watch Amelia's health. Jenny complied. Every time Lori wanted to make a bottle, she would volunteer, helping her warm the milk and bring it up for her while simultaneously throwing away Lori's milk. Lori didn't notice. The only time she didn't interfere were the occasions in which Lori would breastfeed the baby from her own breasts. That she couldn't intervene with, but she helped as she could, hoping Lori would never notice. Gabriel wasn't expecting Lori to be awake when he got home, but he found her in the kitchen, hair up, barefoot, and making herself some noodles. Hey, he greeted. Lori turned to see him. Hey, she was wearing a large t-shirt. He wasn't sure if she was wearing any other thing underneath. He tried not to think of that. You're kind of early today, she said, and he nodded. Yeah, kind of, he said as he removed his suit jacket and dropped it on the chair. I thought you'd be asleep already, he said, and Lori shrugged. I should be, but Amelia was awake, she said, and he nodded. Oh, how is she now? She's finally asleep. Gabriel nodded. That's good. Do you want some noodles? She asked, and he shook his head. He had dinner before he left the office. No, I don't think so. I already ate dinner. She didn't. She had been too busy playing video games with Elliot. They must have spent close to 4 hours in the lounge playing games. Lori didn't even realize that time had gone by so fast. By that time, she didn't feel like eating dinner, and Elliot had gone back to the pool house. That's good. He sat there awkwardly as he watched her move around the kitchen, humming softly. He had so many things to say to her, so many things that he wanted to say, but couldn't. He had been avoiding her simply because he couldn't look at her after the things he had done and found out. He was torn between telling her about her true nature or letting her live a little more without the knowledge of what she was, of what he was. Draco wanted him to tell her everything as soon as possible, but Gabriel didn't think she was ready. Why would she? She was young. It would be a lot for her to take in, especially after all that she had been through. He also especially felt bad for telling Jenny to replace her breast milk with formula. It was only for Amelia's sake. He hoped that if he at least lessened the quantity of Lori's breast milk she was taking, it would at least stop Amelia from having growth spurts. He couldn't bring himself to tell her not to breastfeed Amelia again. He could only imagine what she would think after he said that. He picked up his jacket. Okay, I'm heading to bed. I'll see you upstairs, he said, and Lori nodded. He was walking away when she called out to him. She had been thinking about it, and it didn't seem right or remotely sensible that she was still sleeping in Gabriel's room. She thought it would be best if she went back to her room. I think it's best I go back to my own room now, she said, and Gabriel froze. Why? Did something happen? He finally asked, and she shook her head. No, Nothing really, but I no longer have nightmares. The door of my room is fixed and I'm not sick anymore. I don't think I have any reason to still stay." She twisted her fingers in her shirt as she looked down, clearly nervous and anxious about how he would react to what she said. "I wanted to tell you in person before I left," she added. There was silence, and it seemed to span for hours as Gabriel thought of the right thing to say. He liked her sleeping in his bed. He liked that the heat of his body could provide warmth, and he liked that he could provide her comfort when she was distressed in her sleep. He walked up to her till he was standing right in front of her. With one finger, he raised her chin up. Tell me that you don't want to sleep in my room anymore." Laurie's knees almost gave in at the sound of his voice. He was staring at her, the full intensity of his blue eyes on her, his finger still under her chin, forcing her to stare at him, forcing her to think about those thoughts that she had pushed so far away from her mind, those bad thoughts that sometimes kept her awake at night when they were in bed together. I. She was unable to say it, or even utter a proper sentence, because it would be a lie, a blatant lie. She didn't want to leave, not him, not his bed, not his room. Gabriel could see the answer written on her face, but he decided he'd wait for the words to come out of her mouth, so he decided to taunt her a little. With one hand around her waist, he pulled her close to him, the movement jerking Laurie right towards him, their faces merely inches away from each other. "Do you want to leave?" he asked again, his voice husky, low. Laurie heard the words, but her eyes were on his lips. "No." She finally breathed out, and that was all he needed to hear. Their lips collided,